Hey everybody, it's me, Remy, the comic book poser, and we're here today to welcome you to Enter the Poserverse. Sorry about last week. I've been super apologetic to David. We had technical difficulties last week, which, if you all know me as well as I think a lot of you do, technical difficulties meant two things. The first was I fell asleep with my daughter and woke up and I was like, oh shit, I was supposed to interview somebody about a Marvel book. I've ruined my... The second thing was, you all have heard me and Jelly talk about how batshit crazy Midwest weather is, and we've been ping-ponging back and forth between it being 30 and 80 degrees outside, which those of y'all with any kind of seasonal allergies know how bad that is. So I'm going to show off my the usual thing, your books that you will get in this week's Poser Pile entry. So if you have commented on Tuesday's poll list video, while some of y'all were enjoying 420, some of us had to stay home with a wife in a very conservative state because she had emergency dental surgery, and I can't have weed for legal because I'd say thanks Obama, because I still will thanks Obama everything out of habit, but thanks, Kansas. So right now there are 4 books in the Poser Pile, and I will add 1 or 2 more. I just have to figure out which Wolverine variants that I want to put in there. But your free books of the week are Doctor Strange, The Nexus of Nightmares, the one-shot that I know my buddy Steve Hayner's real excited about. You get Nice House on the Lake, number 8, the B cover, and I know that we'll talk about that at length tonight. You get the Inception Ice Cream Man cover. This is Ice Cream Man 29. I had to look because I've just gone to trade waiting Ice Cream Man because there are too many dope covers and my wallet gets mad. And then a book that I very much loved, given that it's got Jerry Duggan and Brian Posehn working together on it, and they did Deadpool work together. The Secret History of the War on Weed, which is the one shot for now. I'm going to guess we might get one of these on every 420. But that's the first thing I wanted to show off here in a few minutes. The chat bot will start spamming away at the link to last Thursday, or this last Tuesday's video, and we'll give that away in about an hour. The other thing that I want to show off, we've been slowly crawling towards 1,250 subscribers, and for the longest time I've said that this is the giveaway. This is a Blacklight Spider-Man Funko Pop and t-shirt combo in a 2 tubby tubby, so if you're as big as I am, you can get these things. And if you're like, I don't like Funko Pops, the pop here currently is going for like $130, so if you don't want it, maybe I'll buy it back from you. But I'm adding to that giveaway one of my other collection fascinations in a 1 tubby tubby. I can't wear this shirt, but you've got the Blacklight Evil Lyn Pop Tea combo, some good old Masters of the Universe action, and then to go with that, we've got 2 slabs that we're going to give away. In a 9-2, we've got Ultimate Spider-Man number 19 with a sweet Venom cover. And then we've got Superior Spider-Man number 1. You get some Stiltman in this, and you know how much I love my absurd heroes or villains. In a 9-8, and I will probably add some more stuff between now and then. You can expect the video where you can go comment and stuff for your entry to pop up. I'll probably edit it tomorrow at school. But those are the first 2 things I wanted to talk about. And before we introduce our guest for this evening, I will bring in my partner in crime, because I have something that I have been keeping a secret from him, and there is only one other person that I've shared with him, and you can see Jelly's image in the background. or I could see his face. Uh, so Jelly, how you been? It's been a hot minute since I've seen you. I know. Last time we went live, the hospital was a hospital,
Yeah.
and
People
then
never stop having heart attacks and strokes. It's ridiculous.
all right. So you want to see what this secret is?
Oh, absolutely.
So many, many moons ago, when I was like, it would be cool to have shit with my logo on it, I set up a Redbubble page that I think I've sold a whole, like, 3 things from, and 2 of them were to me. But I went and did something, and I
Ho!
took our amazing Shop Talk logo that was put together by Helvetica and put it on the front of a shirt.
Yeah.
And then on the back, if I can, I got to figure out how to show it from this. I'm not smart. Why aren't you turning around? On the back, we got a little thanks for stopping by and have a good one action going on. So I'll drop the link to this now. But basically what I did was go in on Bonfire and set this to the cheapest it would let me sell a shirt for. So, you know, I am making, I think, like a whole 70 cents off of each transaction for this. But I figured
Mr. Rockefeller.
for as much, as much as I've loved doing this and we've all enjoyed doing this, I figure it would be pretty cool to throw our Shop Talk stuff on a shirt. And the only other person who's seen it is Helvetica, mostly because if I'm going to use his art or his design on a shirt, I'm buying him one, and I'm buying Lady V one because I know she will murder me if I do not. But I've dropped the link there. This is going to be the only version of this shirt if you all are interested. It's going to run for 2 weeks on Bonfire, and then it's going to be done. So it'll ship out
limited edition
10 days after that. But I figured for a lot of y'all who are constantly here with us, if you want a little something to rep your love of Shop Talk with, then you can do that. But
yeah, it's a limited edition.
Yeah, there you go. And then we'll make a variant edition, and then I'll make the incentive shirt, and then a chase shirt for all my Funko people. But we're not here to talk about buying a shirt. We're not here to talk about the free shit that you can get. Although we'll mention something that we're doing for tonight's Super Chat giveaway. But I am very excited.
Yeah, we got something better than all that.
To introduce our guest for the evening. So I first was introduced to tonight's guest, I believe, when he was interviewed on the Comic Burrito about his Kickstarter work, the OZ, which is about, like, if Dorothy were a PTSD, like, Iraq war veteran, what would happen in that universe. We've seen two books kickstarted on the OZ, and that is the book that he won a Ringo Award for. He's the author of Going to the Chapel and Spencer and Locke, and then where, if you're not familiar with some of that work, you may better know him as the author behind the absolute smash hit from Aftershocks Comics, Scout's Honor, which was absolutely insane, and I'll make some demands about that in a minute. But he is also the first person we are talking to on Shop Talk in the Poserverse about their transition from doing some self-published stuff or some independent work into writing a big 2 comic. That every time you interview an indie author or a Kickstarter project author, you go, if you got your chance to write a big 2 book, who would you pick and why? And we got that. He is the author of the upcoming new volume of Savage Avengers, which comes out on May 11th. I almost said May 4th, but they changed it, and it still says May 4th on Marvel's website, but everything else says May 11th because they don't want anybody making Star Wars jokes anymore. But without any further ado, we are more than excited to invite and have in the Poserverse tonight's guest, David Pepose.
Hi. Wow, what an intro. Thank you so much. It's very kind of you. I'm excited to be on the show. Thank you guys so much for having me. And yeah, I'm excited to talk some comics with you tonight.
So, what drew you into comics? Because if you all don't follow David, you can see his at Pepose is his handle on everything, and that's why I love him. Because when I want to write about it or tag him, it's on one place, and I don't have to go, shit, what is he here? I know that you're a comic fan, that you read a lot of comics,
Sure.
in addition to being a creative talent, but what drew you into comics? What is your comic book origin story?
Sure. I've read comics for as long as I can remember. I'm actually a third generation comics fan. My grandfather was a big comics fan. He passed when I was very young, and my grandmother actually threw out all of his old comics. She had no idea kind of what the value of those were. I could have gone to college on those comics. My mother then read all of my grandfather's comics, and then I became a comics fan as well. And my first few comics, Amazing Spider-Man 346. That was my first comic.
All right.
David Nishimi and Eric Larson. Spider-Man versus Venom, right before they wind up duking it out on the island.
Yep.
That really blew my mind. There are a couple others. Untold Legends of the Batman #2. I had that as a comic on tape. So I couldn't read the words, but I could hear them.
Yeah.
And then the Infinity War #2. That really kind of blew my mind as a kid, because then I realized that all these characters, they all, so many of them were in the same universe, and they all knew each other. And that was just, I was hooked for life. And so, I've just been a comics fan ever since. It kind of comes in ebbs and flows, over the course of my reading career. I'd find some books and I'd really dig them. Things like Nightfall, Kingdom Come, Death and Return of Superman. And then I'd kind of recede for a while. And then I'd discover Spawn and Crimson, and I'd be like really into that for a while. And then I would discover Grant Morrison with JLA and New X-Men. I'd be hooked on that for a while. And then Why the Last Man and Brian K. Vaughan, going up to 52 in Civil War. And that's really, I was kind of hooked on a professional level. And so, now I'm a Wednesday warrior like everybody else.
Well, and I laughed when you said having the comic on tape, because I think about, like, I've done stuff with my kids on this channel, and part of it, when they get excited, is, are they doing it because daddy likes it and they want to emulate me, or are they doing it because they're interested? And my oldest is in kindergarten, and they all have iPads that stay in the classroom, but during their independent reading time, he's got a full library on there. And all of those, like, I can read, like, beginning readers and level 1 readers, like, he's reading Black Panther and Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy and all of these things. And it's like, I enjoy that, for as much as, during I would say through my high school and beginning of my college years, comic books go in and outside of the mainstream until the dominance of the MCU, and it's like, okay, I don't have to sit and describe a panel to my kid anymore. There's something that's on his level. Or my daughter has the ABCs of, like, the women in DC, and she likes going through those. So I love the accessibility of it now, and I think there are times where they're like, I want to read this because dad is sitting here reading a murder, stab, scary book. But then listening to a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old get excited for a comic book, just is that kind of invigoration of, like, okay, like, if I can trick them into reading funny books, then I will make them a reader for life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, don't introduce them to Spencer and Locke, please. That will ruin your children. But no, I get it. I think I love sort of the juxtaposition of, it's the writing and the art, and I've always loved that since I was a kid. And I remember reading Frank Miller and John Romita Jr.'s Daredevil, The Man Without Fear.
Yep.
I was 7, maybe 8 at most when my parents got me. It's like a collection of singles from Target or Walgreens. And it really blew me away. I remember thinking as a kid, like, oh, there's a voice here. Like, I'd never really understood what voice was in media until I read that book. And that's when I realized, like, oh, real writers and real artists make these things. And that was kind of the seed that really, it took a while to blossom. But I think I really do attribute that book to the reason why I'm in this career in the first place.
I think that's a good, like, if you could point to somebody super inspirational, or to a character that has longevity, then there you go. And we'll talk about you getting to play with a version of Daredevil here in a little bit.
Yeah. It's funny you said that, because my first comic book off the rack was Daredevil 257.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, that was the first comic book I bought with my own money.
Nice.
I think I was 7.
Wow.
So,
Punisher, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you've been writing a lot of stuff in the comics world, but I also know one of your original writing gigs was a crime reporter.
Yeah.
So either who hurt you, or like, were you a journalism major and that was the first job that was open? Like, what propelled you into want to write as a mainstay of your career?
Well, I grew up in Missouri. I was raised in St. Louis. And,
okay.
I didn't know anybody who like made a career doing entertainment. It's I was so far away from either of the coasts that just I had no creative role models, so to speak. And so when I went to college and realized very quickly that I could not be a lawyer like I had thought I was not cut out for it. I said, okay, writing in some capacity. I know I can write. I know I can do this. So I tried doing a little bit of everything because I didn't know kind of what I'd be the best fit at. So I majored in American Studies at Brandeis University, which basically that was their journalism department. And then I took classes. I did a double minor in creative writing and in theater. And so I did a little bit of everything. I was the news editor for my college paper. I worked at the campus radio station. I directed plays. I took classes in screenwriting, playwriting, directing, just to get a sense of like what was I the best fit at. And I actually wound up interning at DC Comics
Nice.
when I was in college. I worked on books like Batman R.I.P. and Final Crisis and Green Lantern Secret Origins. And it was an amazing experience. And it really solidified I wanted to work in comics. That was my dream job. I didn't know in what capacity, though. And I didn't really get a chance to figure it out because a recession was going on. And so, I took, I had interned in newsrooms. I knew how to work my way around a newspaper. And so I wound up moving to rural Massachusetts. I became a crime reporter for the Berkshire Eagle. I was doing a lot of the night calls to all the police stations every night, being like, has there been any breaking crime going on? Have there been any accidents? Have there been any
like blotter stuff, kind of?
Yeah. The Berkshires was some of the larger gangs from like Albany. The Berkshires were kind of like the training ground. We always said it was sort of the summer camp for the gangs, because like the population wasn't as big, the police presence wasn't as big.
Yeah.
And so I worked a lot of nights. I did reporting and I did editing and page design. So I would kind of switch off between the two roles, usually every other night. And meanwhile, while I was doing all that, I was moonlighting at Newsarama. I met Janelle Azalin when she started as an assistant editor in the Batman office, and she was a Newsarama alum. And she connected me with my mentor, Troy Brownfield, who was the reviews editor at the time. And when he sort of rode off into the sunset, he kind of passed the torch to me. So, I was working as a newspaper reporter and doing comic reviews in the mornings. And it was, it was a young man's game. at least. But I really learned a lot. I learned not to be afraid of deadlines. I learned not to be afraid of a blank page. I learned kind of how to synthesize my own voice and sensibilities as what I liked about comics and what I didn't. I learned from everybody else's mistakes, but I also kind of was able to piece together my own toolkit based on everything I liked from other people. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience. I pretty quickly realized though that I didn't see a future for myself in newspapers. I was young. I was only 24 at the time, and I saw people working too many multiple jobs to like support their children, and I was just like, well, I'm too young to, I need a future. So I wound up going back to school. I went to Columbia University in New York. They had a publishing program, and I thought, maybe I'd get into comics that way. Maybe I'd be an editor. And it did not work out that way. I actually wound up tripping and falling into a job in television. Simon & Schuster was owned by CBS Corporation, and one of the editors at Simon & Schuster said, "We really like you. We have no jobs, but corporate needs an editor in their publicity division." And so I worked in there for a while, and similarly to my newspaper experience, felt very restless about it. There was not really any creative juice being used there. And I thought, well, maybe I'll be an editor. And at the time, I thought, what would be the best way to prove that I could do the job as an editor is putting my own books together.
Yeah, edit your own stuff. Yeah,
edit my own stuff. And so I remember I went home. I visited my father in Missouri, and he asked me, "How's work?" And I was like, it's keeping me off the streets. And he said, "What's the thing that only you can do?" And I remember thinking about that. I said, I'm not saying I'm the only person who can write, but I'm the only person who can write the way I write. And I remember I went home, and that next week I wrote the first issue of Spencer and Locke, my first book. And I kind of tricked myself into that book. I wrote a first issue, and I was like, that was fun. I remember showing it to my girlfriend, and she was very excited by the script. So I was like, maybe I'll write an outline just for the rest of the arc. And that came by really fast, which has not been the norm for me ever since. It's usually the most time-consuming part of the job for me. And I said, that's fun. Let me find an artist, just to get some pages out,
just backed up with creativity.
Yeah. And then I was like, maybe we'll shop it around just for the experience, just so I kind of know what it's like to do that. And suddenly I get an email back saying, how soon can you finish this book? And I kind of dipped my toe in the pool enough times that I tripped and fell into the deep end.
Yeah, well, I mean, what a great way to confirm a dream.
Yeah,
like just the first one goes.
Yeah, right, first one went right through.
Finish this. Yeah,
and I've been kind of doing that ever since. I moved to Los Angeles. I think I just marked my 6-year anniversary a couple weeks ago, and I thought at the same time I was like, if I want to work in development or current programming, which is sort of the television equivalent of a comics editor, I got to be out here on the West Coast. I got to get an assistant job, work my way up there. And I found out very quickly I was not cut out to be an assistant. I was, not only was I not built for it, I was kind of not in an environment that was going to let anybody succeed in that role. And, meanwhile, Spencer and Locke's coming out. We're getting great reviews. And I kind of was like, I think the universe is telling me something.
Yeah.
And so I've just been plugging away at it ever since.
Oh, I'm glad you listened to the universe.
Yeah. Well, and I like, two of the things that you said that really stuck out to me, right? You mentioned, the first time you read a comic and really found a voice.
Yeah.
And you talked about how that was something that was important for you to develop in your writing. And you found that you hit a ceiling with your reviews of other people's work, your crime reporting work, your editing work, and I think that's the interesting kind of competition that we all think of. Like, as a teacher, I hear what other people are doing in my building, and it's like, oh fuck, that's kind of cool. Why can't I do that? And I like the iron sharpens iron. So before we move into talking explicitly Savage Avengers, if you had to truncate down like the elevator pitch of not any of your books, but more of your voice, if nobody has read a David Pepose comic, what are the things that we could expect from anything that you have written?
Yeah. For me, I kind of consider myself the king of the mashup. I love sort of figuring out what, I didn't invent a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I didn't invent peanut butter. I didn't invent jelly. I'm just the idiot that figured out how to put them together.
I like that.
Or the peanut butter cup or the pineapple pizza. I'm always trying to figure out where's the overlap. And some of that's just because that's what's fun and interesting to me, but also just from a writer's perspective, it means I can switch gears if I'm ever getting stuck. But I think beyond that, I think I've got a little bit of subversive streak. I try to get a little bit of a sense of humor. Sometimes my comedy can be a little bleak, but I think at the heart of it, I'm always trying to make people cry. I'm always trying to find that emotional catharsis. And so my agent always referred to it as a little bit of grit and a little bit of wit. And I feel like sort of the pop culture mashup that makes you laugh and then really makes you cry. That's kind of me to a T.
Well, and that feels like, you talked about a directing and a theater background. Yeah. I coach speech and debate. And I look at my kids and I go, the easiest way to make me emotionally vulnerable is to make me laugh.
Yeah.
Right? Laughing is far harder than any other emotion. So if you open me up by knowing what's funny, and I like that because you said a little bit of grit and a little bit of wit and making people cry, and I was like, yep. Oh, you son of a bitch.
We all have like a little bit of that weak spot, I think. And that's something I always try to play to. A big inspiration for me, a big influence, I should say, was Devin Grayson and Roger Robinson's Batman Gotham Knights. If you read that series, they should have it on Comixology. I know they've released 1, maybe 2 trades of it so far. Came out in the early 2000s. It's really the Rosetta Stone for a lot of my work. Between that and maybe Afterlife with RG. I'm somewhere right in the middle of that. But Devin really wrote this kind of powerful, brooding Batman who's really just this sad guy who's alone.
Yeah.
Not really equipped to emotionally handle that. And I really like that. I think poor coping strategies is like a recurring theme in my work. Because that's sort of the driving force, I think, for a lot of my narratives is just people who cannot cope properly. And this is sort of their weird way of doing it.
Poor coping equals drama.
And varying stages of unhealthiness means a character arc. That's kind of what I tend to gravitate towards. I'm just kind of like, if I can sort of feel a little pinch in my heart, I'm probably doing something right. And I usually try to get at least one of those moments for every single series I write. Because I think that's the stuff that you really remember, and that's the stuff that keeps you emotionally invested in the books.
Right. I meant to look for this sooner. So I think everybody who, has watched anything that I've put together, read anything that I put out, and tried to communicate with me, I think my brand is that I'm terrible at social media and communication. And I remember a couple of weeks ago reading my Marvel funny books and seeing a page that looked something like this.
Oh, yeah.
And I read that while I was drinking at the brewery down the street after New Comic Book Day, and I went, how the fuck did I miss that Pepose was writing Savage Avengers? And your response was, apparently I'm not tweeting about it enough. And I was like, oh shit. So, the Savage Avengers is a team that is relatively new to me, and we'll get to that in a second, but give us your elevator pitch, and I'll make you bigotized for why in 2 weeks now? 3 weeks? 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
Yeah. Shutter, who's tried to message me like each of the last 3 weeks, and I've been like, oh, I'll get to that, and then I forget and see the next message. So give us your pitch to why, if I have not put this on my pull list, why should I pick it up or try and pull it now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you definitely need to put Savage Avengers on your pull list. This is It's basically sword and sorcery Terminator. It's Conan the Barbarian. For those who haven't been reading Savage Avengers, he's in the modern Marvel universe. He's sort of been pulled from his time to our present. And in Jerry Dugan's run, he was having a lot of adventures in our present. Sort of almost like a Marvel team up. We have a permanent cast now for our run of Savage Avengers because Conan's adventures in the present have attracted the attention of Deathlock the Destroyer, who is part of a multiversal peacekeeping force from the end of time. And they have come back to our present and charged Conan with crimes against the time stream, which he is more than prepared to erase. And unfortunately, sort of an unlikely team of heroes winds up getting caught in the crossfire, and they all wind up having to fight their way out of the Hyborian Age. So it's pretty cool. We got kind of this mashup of sci-fi and fantasy. We've got kind of an interesting twist on Conan's adventures in the Marvel Universe. Instead of bringing Conan to us, we're sort of bringing the modern Marvel Universe back to Conan. And so, yeah, it's a really kind of cool, interesting fish out of water kind of story. If you like things like Al Ewing's Mighty Avengers, that was a big inspiration for this series, or Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force, or Grant Morrison's seminal JLA run. That's a lot of the stuff that we were tapping into for this series. And so, if you only know one of these characters, you're going to fall in love with the rest of them. And even if you don't know any of the Savage Avengers, this is just a really fun team book that kind of evokes both kind of classic Avengers mythology and classic Robert E. Howard Conan stories, and kind of remixes them into something very, very new.
Nice. Now I'm going to pull up a comment from my main homie, Weiwei's Comics, who might be the biggest Venom fan that I know.
Yeah.
And he's like me. He says, I haven't read any Savage Avengers and have been wanting to because I know Venom's involved. And I heard you're bringing in anti-Venom in the place of Venom. So the question that I want to ask before we get there is, like I mentioned, I tweeted it and you were like, just read Jerry Dugan's arc. And I was like, okay. So what level of knowledge of Savage Avengers should I have, or does anybody need before they read issue number 1
you don't need
of
any.
your arc? Nice.
You don't need any. All you need to know is Conan's been in the present. Beyond that, we're going to give you all the exposition you need. This is very much the story that it is in the tin. I guess beyond that, we'll introduce all these characters, but like obviously, if you know them, of course, it's even more helpful. Electra's been running around as Daredevil, as the all new Daredevil. Flash Thompson recently came back from the dead as anti-Venom. Weapon H is part Hulk, part Wolverine. Black Knight and Cloak and Dagger are there. There's not really a whole lot of status quo shifting for them. But yeah, we try to kind of lead you into it. I mean, based on the way that I read comics growing up, I try not to lean too heavily into like the past continuity. I kind of want it to be one of those things. You read it, that's all you need to know. Just trust in the process, and you'll be able to go through with it. You should be able to know from context cues kind of what's going on, and anything else that you wouldn't know from context cues, we will definitely lead you on through any relevant information that you need to know.
Oh, I appreciate that. Like, part of where like people look at me and they're like, "Why do you have Poser as part of your branding? That's a bad thing." And it's like, I took 10, 12 years off of comics between college and then having 3 kids.
Sure.
And part of the thing that intimidated me from it was just the vast knowledge and depth of everything that you needed, right? And what excited me was, like, what brought me back into comics was House of X #1, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Fantastic
you need to know who these people are, and if you don't, we'll give you enough information. So it's awesome to know, in that same vein, that's kind of where you are aiming as a creator as well. That's a good, I think that attitude is what makes, big Marvel and DC comics potentially as accessible as indie comics. That's why I'm more of an indie person. Like, I can pick up a 6-issue run of something and be like, oh, cool, I got that story. I don't need to know 20 years of what happened in the past. So I really like that MO as a creator.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of stems down to the way that you put a book together like this. Especially you put together kind of an all new roster like we did for Savage Avengers. It's one of those things. It's sort of a draft pick, because you kind of are dealing with sort of the traffic jam that is a shared superhero universe. And so for me, it's sort of figuring out kind of certain roles that I needed filled on this team, and then kind of having, all right, for this particular role, here's 3 characters that I think could fit the mandate. And for this role, here's a couple characters that could fit the mandate. And these are some characters who I really, really want. Like, there's not a whole lot of alternatives here. Is there any way we can get that? For me, that was Cloak and Dagger. I said, I'll go to the mat begging for Cloak and Dagger. I don't really have anybody else that I desperately want more than them. And so for me, it's sort of figuring out what are the personalities, how can we kind of leverage that? And knowing the character histories myself, it makes it a little easier to kind of walk in their shoes a little bit, and then beyond that, it's kind of figuring out, all right, they're, every character's kind of got their own interesting, unique abilities and power sets, and knowing that, like, you can just read it, like, you can just kind of, accept it at face value. We'll explain, any cool new wrinkles for any of these characters' powers as we discover them. But yeah, I think for me, it's always about the personality. Continuity should inform personality,
I like that.
And beyond that, I try to rely on it as little as possible. I sort of use it when I have to, but otherwise I don't want people to have to do homework. If you want to go on Wikipedia and read about Flash Thompson, that's great. I'm super, that will help enrich the experience, I'm sure. But I don't want that to be a requirement. You just order my book. That's the only homework I'll give you.
I like that. And speaking of order his book, nope, I clicked on the wrong thing. If anybody is gracious enough to throw $1 in the super chat tonight, so I sent David a message and I was like, can I send you things to sign them, and then I will keep some and give some to other people? And he was like, yeah. So of those things that I would have pulled them out, but I'm not responsible, I can guarantee that I'm going to send David a Scout's Honor trade. I have 2 copies of, I think, the 1 in 10 of Scout's Honor #1. I have an extra copy of the OZ, and then I'm going to pick up as many copies as I can of Savage Avengers to send. So if you are gracious enough to throw $1 in there and wait a couple of weeks, then if you are the winner, I will send these things to you, because I'm as excited. Like, we talk about following an artist or following an author onto a book, and in looking at Savage Avengers, right, this is something that's way out of my wheelhouse, but I was super excited when I was like, oh fuck, that says David I know David Pepose, I know that guy, he's written other cool things, I need to get this. So if David is new to you and you've got an extra buck to throw our way, we will take it and share some, and I will send you some signed things. So I'm gonna go back this way to my other computer. So what can we expect from the first issue of Savage Avengers 1? And I'll kind of pull up the artwork from, well I'll ask you David's question in a minute, because that's a big one. But tell us about what we can kind of expect from issue #1 as I show off some of Carlos's spectacular, beautiful, mind-blowing, like, the art in this book. Like, if you weren't on it and I had seen these images, I'd be like, oh, I want to see Carlos
is a showstopper. Carlos Magno is, I can't say enough great things about working with Carlos. I always say his style, it kind of hits that sweet spot between Phil Jimenez and Brian Hitch. Ooh. It's kind of this very larger than life cinematic blockbuster style, but then he's got the expressiveness and the fine details of somebody like Phil or George Perez. So I'm thrilled to be working with him. So yeah, as far as our first issue is concerned, in a lot of ways, it's sort of our riff on a classic Avengers assembling story. We're gonna watch the Savage Avengers kind of assemble in real time, and we're gonna watch Deathlock hunting down Conan and kind of figuring out how are these two threads going to collide. I really love writing Conan versus Deathlock. It's sort of the unstoppable force beating the immovable object. You've got sort of the pinnacle of human brute force versus this unstoppable, relentless machine from the future. And yeah, the Avengers, the Savage Avengers, they sort of like the original Avengers. They're sort of they didn't have a whole lot in common. They were sort of thrown together by circumstance on a day unlike any other to battle a foe that no single hero could withstand. And so we'll be kind of seeing the whys and wherefores of all that and getting to know these characters a little bit in our first issue. And then ending on kind of a big twist that's going to really set the tone for the rest of the series.
Nice.
So
this is a really eclectic group.
Yeah, so
it's almost like a deep cuts.
Yeah,
it's like some really awesome characters.
Thank you. I feel the same way. I the way that came to be was, for those who haven't read Jerry Dugan's spectacular first run of Savage Avengers, I highly recommend it. I reread all of it, in preparation for this series. And for those who haven't read it, though, the original Savage Avengers, the first arc, they had kind of a codified team. It was sort of an unofficial roster. They had Wolverine, Elektra, Punisher, Dr. Voodoo, and Venom teaming up with Conan. And they that was sort of the roster for the first arc, and then the series kind of turned into more of a Conan team-up book, where he would sort of bounce around the Marvel universe, teaming up with different heroes and different adventures. Like one time he was on the opposite side of a bank robbery, so he fought Spider-Man, or he broke out of prison with Deadpool. Sort of like done in ones or 2 in 1.
I gotta take my headphones out. This is spoilers. I'm only 6 issues in.
Well, but basically, when I put this team together, first off, the first thing I said when they said, "Do you have any ideas for Savage Avengers?" Beyond me saying, "Hey, what if we did Conan versus the Terminator, in this case, Deathlock?"
Yeah,
I said I'd really love to have a permanent roster. I think that's a really great way to kind of maximize the emotional investment, because readers will have a whole bunch of different characters to glom onto and a whole bunch of different chances to find a favorite character that they particularly like. And so I wanted to first kind of speak to Jerry's original roster, as best I could. So, Elektra returning as an original Savage Avenger, but now it was Daredevil. I was like, that's a cool upgrade. That's some fun iconography.
Absolutely.
She's got a cool kind of character arc that she's going through in Chip Zdarsky's book. And that, where
I want to pause you really quick on that one.
Yeah.
So I know that sometimes Marvel, with both their comic talent as well as the MCU talent, like, there's a lot of shrouded in secrecy with little bits of, like, left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And, like, case in point recently was the Hawkeye show team didn't know that Murdoch was making an appearance in No Way Home, in the same way that the No Way Home team didn't know that Kingpin was showing up.
Yeah.
So at what point, like, I guess, how long have you been writing the book? Because I know the Elektra Daredevil reveal happened, like, early January, maybe December?
Yeah. Elektra had been Daredevil for a little bit. By the time that Marvel approached me, it was shortly before the July 4th holiday last year. So I've been working on.
Wow, so almost a year to print.
Yeah, almost a year
from the start.
From the start, and so it's one of those things. I think you're right. Like, I think there's always, it's counterintuitive. It's one of those things on the outside looking in, you're kind of like, well, why doesn't everybody know everything? And on the inside, I'll tell you that it's actually for everybody's safety. It's the editors' jobs that they kind of know where all the bodies are buried, not necessarily the creatives. And the reason why that is, I think, is because first off, it sort of keeps anybody from muddying the waters. It keeps people from being tempted to muddy the waters. You know, if I knew every single thing that every other writer was doing, you know, it'd be very tempting to be like, oh, well, I want to do something like that. You know, like it'd be very easy for a creator to sort of step on somebody's toes, accidentally or not. And secondly, you know, it's privileged information, you know, and so you know, the less people that know, the less likely it is to leak.
So has there been anything
kind of a new problem too, though? I mean, we haven't had MCUs and TV shows going on in conjunction with comic books, and
no, they don't tell me about any of that. That is above my pay grade. But
in that same vein, has there been anything, without having to spill the tea, but like, has there been anything in your outline, in your arc, where you're like, I want to do this, and you've kind of gotten the signal from an editor who's like, you can't touch that shit yet?
Yeah, no, that's definitely happened. You know, I can say, for example, like when we were sort of batting around different team lineups, you know, like I had known pretty early on that they were going to be doing the relaunch with the Punisher. So, like that was sort of one of those, maybe steer clear. I knew Wolverine was going to be in Lives and Deaths of Wolverine, and that there was going to be enough overlap that we probably wouldn't want to use him in our story on top of what was already in that office. You know, but it's one of those things, like it's sort of need to know. You know, when it's germane, they'll tell you, and if not, you just kind of keep doing your own thing. And I think that's a really good way to not get super overwhelmed. Because it's hard enough to make one of these series just on your own, like, let alone sort of thinking, oh, what's everybody else up to?
Yeah.
Was there anyone you asked for that they said no?
That was going to be my other question.
There were a couple of people that we batted around that that were like, no, this person's not available. I can tell you, for example, like, we weren't sure if we were going to get Flash Thompson. You know, we were kind of like, I had a couple of ideas for spider-based people. You know, there was a world where I would have pitched Carnage, for example, that Rom V is doing a spectacular job over right now. You know, there were other spider-based characters that I was like, we don't have Flash. You know, what about X, Y, and Z? You know, I could have pitched Prowler. I could have pitched Kane. But you know, Flash felt like kind of the right fit. You know, just in terms of his, you know, his visibility in the Marvel universe. And I loved kind of what we were able to do with his personality. He's probably one of my favorite characters to write out of the whole roster.
Really?
He's you know, he contains layers. You know, he's a former Army veteran, you know, a double amputee, you know, former alcoholic, former high school football star, former high school bully, kind of a D-bag, but he's our D-bag. You know, that's how I frame it. So he's always kind of, he kind of bridges the best of both worlds with Spider-Man.
Well, and I think he's became even more relevant in the way that he's been used at the end of, like, Planet of the Symbiotes and the end of kind of the King in Black arc. So that's a good way.
Yeah.
Where if you know that you can't go full-fledged Venom because you don't know what Rom V and Al Ewing are going to do, that becomes a good way to be like, we can play in this sandbox. And then, in a way, like, is there a possibility of, like, if Flash Thompson becomes super relevant, it can be like, okay, you can have Flash for a couple of issues, but you give me Venom? Like, do you have the feel that there could be that kind of creative give and take?
No, I mean, we're keeping this cast for the long haul. As long as I'm writing this book, this will be the cast. And it's not to say that I don't have sort of ideas in the back of my head if we ever want to, like, shake things up, but this will be the core cast, and I'm not giving them up. You know, and the way that our story kind of unfolds, it allows us to kind of dance between the continuity raindrops a little bit.
I like that.
So, you'll sort of know more as the series progresses, but it's not going to sort of negatively impact anybody's continuity. Yeah, you know, I feel like these characters, you know, I wanted to speak to Jerry's original run. to go back to what I was saying earlier. So having Anti-Venom as the Venom analog, having Elektra sort of returning, having Weapon H as sort of filling the same role as Wolverine as sort of our clawed person, but also like it was kind of like it felt like an oversight not to have a Hulk on that team.
Right, you're like, but I also get Hulk.
Yeah, and I thought like he had like a cool silhouette. I thought there were some really interesting things about the way he came about his powers that I think have some interesting implications. And I also love Clay's personality. I really liked Greg Pak and Corey Smith's run on Weapon H. I love the idea that he's not just Hulk meets Wolverine, but he's also Jason Bourne meets Roy Kent.
Yeah.
Where like he's this super trained, like hyper competent soldier guy who like does not want to be in superhero stuff at all. Like he just is so cranky and irritable about it. That like that's funny to me. And seeing whatever opposite of a buddy cop dynamic he has with Black Knight, that's like funny to me.
I was super excited when I did my deep dive on that cover image that I was like, oh, we get Black Knight? Fuck yes. And after finally watching The Eternals, and I saw that end credit scene, I was like, oh, that's why the comic is blowing up, because he's gonna be in a movie.
When
I saw Cloak and Dagger, I was like, oh,
yeah,
it's about time.
So, it's funny. So Black Knight and Cloak and Dagger, meanwhile, that was sort of, I knew with this story in particular, there's going to be a sword and sorcery element to it. And so I wanted a couple of characters that spoke to that. And I felt like Black Knight, that's a cool contrast with Conan.
Yeah.
Cloak and Dagger, they kind of they have like a mystical look to them. They seem like the sorcerers and, and witches that Conan would kind of hate. But
the thing has come to challenge you.
There's nothing third rate, and I'm going to tell you why. Specifically about Cloak and Dagger. So I have been a huge fan of Cloak and Dagger since their appearances in Maximum Carnage. I was of the age; it was the perfect timing. And what really kind of set the light bulb off was books like Civil War and Dark Avengers, X-Men Utopia from Matt Fraction. And those cemented in my mind that Cloak and Dagger were long overdue for the A-list. They have such an interesting backstory to them. Their powers are so elemental and iconic. And at the same time, I feel like they are just the epitome of untapped potential in the Marvel Universe. Their powers have fascinating implications to them. For example, Dagger, she's creating, her weapon of choice has always been her light force daggers that she's been able to conjure up. But my thinking is, what else can she make with the light force? What else can she do with the light force? There's a lot that we're going to find out about Dagger that we've only been scratching the surface of what she's capable of. And same thing with Cloak. He's a conduit of the Dark Force. Not only is he sort of the team transport, this is a guy who teleported to the negative zone with hundreds of superheroes in Civil War. But on top of that, this is a guy he's fighting with portals. Like up and down do not really apply to somebody like Cloak. You try to go hand to hand with Cloak, and he's going to drop you off a 20-story building.
Right.
But also, what are the kind of ways that he can manipulate the Dark Force? A very cool thing. Carlos draws Cloak incredibly, and something that we talked about early on as sort of a visual inspiration was Spawn's cape. And so we've got, how does he use the Dark Force as almost like a prehensile thing with his cape?
I'll pull that image back up real fast because it's sitting here on my other computer, and it is a thing of beauty.
Yeah. So it's there's a lot of cool stuff with all of these characters, and ultimately that's kind of the point that I'm going for with this book, is there's no such thing as bad characters. There's no such thing as third rate. There's just characters that haven't been shown enough love yet. And that's what Savage Avengers really is all about, is we're going to make you fall in love with these characters. I know that they, at first glance, might seem a little thrown together, But I promise that they were chosen very deliberately. There's a plan. And I think the common thread that they all share is that they're all characters that are struggling with their dark side. And they're all characters that they're the only ones that can really understand what the other ones are going through. And they're the only ones that can kind of pull them through all this. So these Avengers, they're going to really get to know each other very well. They're going to they're the survivors. And they're only going to survive because of each other. So I think there's a lot that can be explored with this cast, and I'm very excited for readers to get to see where we're headed with them.
I think this is the first time you've shown up in a chat or in my comments. I fucking love you, and I like how your comments are trolly enough, and Dave's just able to be like, yeah, like bullet dodge around them. But I really appreciate how much you've committed to the thing, and I love that because it makes me laugh in the same way that, you know, you say there's no third-rate character, and I think about all of the Island of Misfit Toys characters that I am into, and I think that's why I, you know, started appreciating Savage Avengers from Jerry's run, where it's by no means like, here are 10 characters you've never heard of in a book, let's go. It's a couple of characters that you see get mainstream roles from time to time, and then it's let's blow the dust off of them because they tell a good story. And listening to you talk about Cloak and Dagger and why you picked Weapon H and kind of the theme of everybody struggling with their dark side, as a fan of comics, of Marvel stuff, I think what excites me about your description is that I really like that you've done your homework, not just I read Jerry Dugan's version because that's what I'm following, but it's all of these intelligent decisions behind why you've picked a character. And I think thinking about why you've picked everybody who's struggling with their dark side and knowing that your goal is to make me laugh and make me cry, like, now I can think about this on a different level of like, oh, how's he gonna get me at the end?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can tell you that we get some really fun crowd pleaser moments in every issue. You know, we just today revealed our cover for issue 3, which has Elektra about to put the beat down on Deathlock, and that is a particularly fun issue where I feel like, you know, we really that is a 20-page fight comic that is super fun. Yeah, you know, I just think that these are really fun characters that they gel together in ways that have surprised me, you know.
Nice.
And that's where I think the you know, looking at personality, and that's where you can kind of leverage continuity for your benefit a little bit.
I like that.
For example, you know, that Elektra and Flash Thompson have been Thunderbolts together, so they know each other.
Yeah.
You know, knowing that Elektra knows Conan, like, there's a little bit more of a familiarity there than necessarily, you know, characters who don't know each other, like Black Knight and Weapon H, who suddenly are kind of thrown together in the thick of it, and boy, they don't really like each other very much. You know, it's sort of a weird odd couple. I compare them. I said it was going to be like Beast and Wonder Man. You know, let's see. Plenty of people are in love with the ladies from Jerry Conway's Carnage. Nobody's heard of them. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I mentioned Al Ewing's Mighty Avengers book. And that was sort of my introduction to Al's work. It was during the Infinity crossover. That series kind of spun out of that. And, you know, it was exactly like Savage Avengers. You know, it was a team that at first blush I would not have really thought much of. You know, it was Luke Cage. There was Spectrum.
Yep.
There was the younger Power Man, the one who the new one, White Tiger. You know, Superior Spider-Man showed up for like a couple of issues, but he was not there for that long. Blue Marvel, Blade in a Halloween costume. You know, like that is not like a roster that on paper makes a ton of sense. but Al was able to find a way to kind of play these characters off each other and play their power sets off one another and figure out what are the implications of White Tiger's powers, for example. She's in service to a god, but what happens when this god says, like, you're not doing enough? That series really stuck with me. I'm so glad I gave it a shot. And that series, it's really the spirit of that book. And you see it also in Rick Remender's work, Uncanny X-Force, like that team on paper doesn't really make a lot of sense, but then you see them in action as, the X-Men's Black Ops team. And you're like, oh yeah, that's badass. Like I get it now. I get why Archangel and Psylocke would be teaming up with Wolverine, Phantom X, and Deadpool, or even his Uncanny Avengers run, you have Cap and Thor with Wolverine and Rogue and Havoc, and you're kind of like, well, that doesn't make a ton of, and Wonder Man, that doesn't make a ton of sense on paper, but then you see them like jamming out together. You're like, oh, that's dope. That's super cool. I'm really into that. And that's really kind of the spirit of the Savage Avengers roster. And you're going to see these characters, they play off each other really cool. It's a lot like the first Avengers movie, where if you rewatch that, you'll notice every single one of those characters gets a chance to bounce off each other at some point in the movie. And that's something that we've really been trying to do in this series. And as the series continues, you'll see different combinations of these characters and seeing the different types of sparks that fly.
I like that a lot. And I think NWO Comics / Biggie, he was like, does David collect books? And we'll get to that in-depth question more. But I think in listening to how much knowledge you've heard David drop, or if you follow him on Twitter, the answer to that is yes. But we'll get back to David as a person in a second. If I wasn't excited before just seeing your name on a random ad page as I was flipping through my Marvel funny books, I'm super fucking hyped now.
Thank you.
Just listening to, you have taken all of these existing characters in the broader Marvel universe and you have created your side of the chessboard in terms of what you want the heroes to do or the Savage Avengers to do. So I'm excited to see what the opposite side looks like in terms of Deathlock and everybody else.
Yeah, Deathlock is so fun. Just similar to Cloak and Dagger, Deathlock's another character that I discovered during Maximum Carnage. Really loved Dwayne McDuffie's incarnation of the character, Michael Collins. The idea of this pacifist kind of being grafted to this killer robot and sort of them kind of having to meet ethically in the middle, which winds up being, non-lethal superhero combat. That was really cool to me as a kid. And Rick Remender and Jason Aaron have done some really cool stuff with Deathlock since, sort of expanding that mythology for this, either this kind of this futuristic like Death Army or this futuristic army of time cops. But the thing I love about Deathlock is it's a very flexible concept. It can come from any period in the Marvel universe. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of what they can do. Kind of what kind of technological armaments you want to give them. They're also kind of an interesting continuity patch in a lot of ways because of the time travel element. And so for me, when I had talked with my editor, Tom Brevoort, I've been in touch with him for a long time, since my first book came out in 2017. So he and I, I've always, every time I did another book, I would always make sure I sent Tom a copy. And the man is like an editorial Jedi master. Like he reads all of it. He's really an incredible gift to any creative team that he works with. Mm-hmm. I lost my train of thought. Where was I with this? Where was I going with this?
You like Deathlock and how your
editor
Deathlock.
Reads yes, everything. Thank you. And so one of the first emails I had sent to Tom, he was like, "Oh, what kind of Marvel characters are you interested in?" And I remember saying, Deathlock and Cloak and Dagger. With this book, I knew, Conan versus Deathlock, that felt like a lock to me. And but the fun thing was, saying, all right, we're going to put a team on this. That means you really have to kind of stack the deck in an interesting way. A regular Deathlock might not be able to hold his own against a Hulk. unless, and that was kind of the questions that I kept throwing in there, is like, what kind of weapons and abilities can we give this Deathlock to really stack the deck? And so we've got some really cool stuff coming. I mean, this, our Deathlock, he can cloak. He's kind of got that like Predator style invisibility. He's got energy blasts. He's got Taskmaster fight software, so he can like just fight a bunch of people. Like,
that's dope.
In whatever style.
He's got a gamma battery that is going to put the hurt on Weapon H in a big way. And finding those sorts of cool things. Deathlock is a really fun antagonist. And his mission has layers that I'm not even sure he's necessarily aware of. And so we will be discovering that along with him.
Nice.
But he contains layers. There's a lot to him. That's really cool.
I was already excited about this. The more you talk about it, the more I'm getting pumped to read this.
Well, and I'm just like, fuck you. May 11th? What happened to May the 4th?
Supply chain delays. It's for me, it actually worked out a little bit better scheduling wise. I have to be on the other side of the country at a family wedding that previous weekend. So I'm glad to not have to try to coordinate signings in an unfamiliar city a few hours before a wedding.
That makes sense.
I digress. We have a lot of fun stuff. I'm kind of writing this book like it's the last thing I'll ever write, which is usually what I do with all of my books. And so I'm throwing the kitchen sink at this book. If this is the last word I have on superheroes, I'm going to make sure it's pretty goddamn loud. And so, we're throwing in, guns and dinosaurs and time travel and robots and zombies and death and redemption and romance and pretty much anything that I could get away with in this book. And I will tell you, they are letting me get away with a lot. So I can pretty much count on one hand the number of times that they've told me you can't do something. And even then, most of the time they let me do like half of it. So I'm very happy with how this series.
So this is very, very true to your vision.
Very true to my vision. They really, the only minor handful of things that they haven't let me do have been so ornamental,
Okay, just inconsequential.
It was. Hopefully, I'm not talking out of school here. Like you can't put Black Knight in a leather jacket the whole time. We have a new redesign for Black Knight. Use it. Like that sort of thing. Tom Brevoort and our editors, Annalise Bisa and Martin Bureau, they've just been incredible resources, and I love how they have really hit that balance nicely of giving me a ton of latitude, but also like providing guardrails when I need it. And there have been plenty of times where I've been like, "Hey, Tom, I could really go either way on this thing. What do you think?" And like I said, editorial Jedi Master. When I pitched this series, Tom had approached me. It was shortly before the July 4th holiday last year. And he said, "We're looking to relaunch Savage Avengers. Do you have any ideas?" And so I emailed him 45 minutes later after the shock wore off. And I was like, well, I'd love to do Conan versus Deathlock, but I'll come up with some ideas for you. And I wound up writing a 15-page document. I came up with 5 different angles, 5 different rosters. And then a whole bunch of just like arcs that these particular characters could go in at the end. It was 15 pages. And Tom read the whole thing. And Tom gave me notes on the whole thing.
Nice.
Wow.
Like, he does not miss anything. And so I love working with him. I can't say enough good things about working with him. And, it's one of those things. It's sort of like, it's like you don't want to let your coach down. That's kind of how I feel writing for Tom Brevoort.
Nice.
And so, they've given me a ton of latitude. And so this series is very true to my vision. I don't do compromise well. And thankfully in this series, I have.
I'm going to ask you a short question and a longer answer question, and then we'll give the poster pile away.
Yeah.
How many issues are we confirmed for at the moment?
Oh, I mean, as far as we know, it's ongoing. You know, I mean, I'll write this thing until they carry me out. You know,
Right.
You know, it's really it's as long as we have a story and as long as there's demand. So you know, I'm writing the second arc now.
Okay.
You know, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. You know, but I have plans. You know, as long as they'll have me and as long as I feel like we have a story to tell, I will continue to tell it.
Okay. Longer answer question that you alluded to seconds ago with your approach from Tom on the July 4th weekend. A lot, you know, we talk to people who work in or get started in Kickstarter projects or, you know, traditional publication through any of the bevy of indie comics. And some people are like, I just want to do this kind of story. I want my control. Some people are, I would love to write this kind of character. So you said 45 minutes after the shock wore in, you started writing. I'm going to make you biggest eyes for this for a second. Talk us through what it was like to to be approached to write a Marvel comic, especially for anybody who's hopped in later. The beginning of the interview, David talked about how each phase of his young professional career was writing, was editing, and realizing that there was something beyond. So
Yeah.
what did that do for you as somebody who had created their own comic work, who had been published through, you know, a traditional indie publisher, to have someone reach out and go, we want you in the big leagues?
Well, you know, the thing is, it was like ever increasing levels of holy shit. Because what happened was, you know, I got an email. I talked with Tom Brevoort. I talked with C.B. Cebulski, you know, both of whom, you know, had read Scout's Honor. They had read the OZ. They had read my previous work, Spencer and Long from Going in the Chapel, and some of my shorter anthology stories as well. And I remember getting an email from Tom saying, "Hey, we might have a possible project. Would you be interested?" That was it. That was all they said at first. And so, of course, there's sort of the like the world kind of slows down for a minute. And I immediately was like, "Yes, yes. I don't care what it is. Yes, I'm interested in this." You know, because that's the kind of email, that's the kind of opportunity that supercharges your career, that changes your life. And I filled out some paperwork for Marvel. Just, you know, basically one of those forms that says, oh, okay, after this question. Okay, I will answer that question in a minute. I had to file a form basically saying if anything I pitch Marvel already has in the works, like I can't sue them. So I filled that out. And then they're like, okay, now that you filled out the paperwork, we're looking to relaunch Savage Avengers. And I was like, oh, like I was thinking, you know, a one shot, you know, a short story. And I remember I kind of saw the email and I was just silent for a minute. And then I remember my puppy Ruby jumped on me. She knew this was an exciting moment before I could even kind of articulate it. And so yeah, you know, I think my first moment was just kind of like, oh my God, like, why me? You know? And then I realized, like, Savage Avengers, that's Marvel's mashup book. And that's kind of the thing that I realized, that's why they reached out to me. That's what I do. I'm the mashup guy. And you know, I'd had this idea in my back pocket for a while. I thought, you know, Conan versus Terminator could be really cool. I'd thought about that before Marvel even got the rights to Conan. And when Marvel did get the rights to Conan, I was like, I guess I'm shelving that idea. You know, that's never going to happen. So, you know, never forget your old ideas, because sometimes you do get to use them. And yeah, you know, it was just one of those, you know, it's an intimidating process for sure. And there's a big learning curve involved. And, you know, I think I've been really fortunate to have great editors that I've worked with who've been able to kind of show me the ropes. And also just friends in the industry who I've been able to say, hey, like, you know, how do you do this? How do you navigate this? You know, I was reading James Tynan's Substack about his time in the Batman office. And I remember telling him at New York Comic Con that year how grateful I was that he wrote that, because it made me feel like, oh, okay, this is the process, and like, and I'm not alone in it, and it's surmountable. You can do this. You can do this.
No, I like that a lot. And I would ask you, if there was, one last thing you wanted to say to pitch the series, but I think you've heard how excited I am, how excited Jelly is, that if there is anybody who is not excited from a fan perspective, seeing somebody who's found their voice as a writer, as a comic book writer, as somebody in the industry, sending a love letter to the team up book, then I don't know if we can be friends. And I feel like I'm saying that a lot lately. Like, if you don't like this, I don't like you.
No, it's it's just, you try to write things that are exciting to you, as both a creator and as a fan. My feeling is, am I excited by this? Is my girlfriend excited about this? She's sort of the person I write everything for.
Yeah.
And then, how does Tom feel about it? And usually that's a really good triangulation for me, in terms of this series. I know Jelly asked a question saying,
we'll get to that in 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's going to help me transition to your indie work, your studio work, your other work, that we're just going to hold you hostage. But I want to give something away. So we've seen a lot of the usual suspects in the chat. We've seen some new people in the chat tonight, and I appreciate The Thing, Michaela. Those are two new people to me. Thank you for joining us. Chop, Cole, Shutter, David, Wayways, everybody else that I forgot in this moment. Thank you as always. So we'll do our poser pile drawing here in a second. You've seen the spam bot drop the link to Tuesday's pull list video. So right now, the books that you are winning, if the random comment picker gets your name here in a second, is Doctor Strange and the Nexus of Nightmares, the one shot. I haven't read that one yet. Nice House on the Lake, number 8, the B cover. That's weird, and we got to talk about it when David's gone, because he's an issue behind. Ice Cream Man number 29, which you can just see my camera freaking out in the corner at the Inception cover. And then we've been talking about Jerry Dugan. You get him with America's Tallest Birdman Stoner Metalhead comic, Brian Posehn again. And you get The Secret History of the War on Weed, number 1 for now. So those are the 4 books you're getting from this week, plus 1 or 2 more. So I'm going to refresh my comments. We're at 14. I think I deleted all of the Spanish porn bots. If not, and they win, then we'll see. I'll send it to our porn overlords. So good luck, everybody. Here we go. I feel like that's rigged as shit, because I know Cole's Comic Claims, who David will know him better as Cole from Comic Burrito, just commented 3 minutes ago and said, I'm sleepy. But, Cole, this is your first Poser Pile win. I will send this to you the next time I've got things for you. But you know I love you, sir, and appreciate the support. So the question I want to ask before we get to Jelly's question. So David Reese, who is a huge supporter over here and helps us transition to your pre-Savage Avengers work, wants to know what it's like to win a Ringo Award.
Boy, that was a surreal night. There was a lot going on that night. For those who aren't aware of some of my other work, during the pandemic, I had already written a series called The OZ, and it's sort of what if the Hurt Locker took place in the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy Gale's granddaughter is an Iraq war veteran who finds herself stranded in the war-torn land of Oz. Because it turns out grandma killing 2 wicked witches in a week and then splitting, that's not a happy ending. That's a power vacuum, not unlike Baghdad. And so I had that series in my back pocket for a while. And, we're trying to shop it around. The pandemic hit, sort of all the acquisition channels kind of shrunk instantly. And so everybody had been telling me you should do a Kickstarter. And I said, well, maybe I'll kill two birds with one stone. Introduce myself to the Kickstarter community, give the OZ a home. It's a win-win. And the book was a huge success, by any metric that I could have possibly thrown at it. I was shocked when we were nominated for 3 Ringo Awards. We were nominated for Best Single Issue or Storyline. And then Mon House, one of our variant cover artists, he was nominated for Best Cover Artist. And our letterer, Dave Hopkins, was nominated for Best Letter. And it was a weird week for me. I had my aunt passed away last October from very early onset Alzheimer's. And so she had been living with my family for a few years. And I had flown home. She had been in hospice. And we had no idea when she was going to pass. She wound up in hospice for weeks. But I flew in. I spent the week with my family, not knowing kind of what was going to happen with my aunt. I almost bailed. On the show. And my mother said, you really should go to this show. You've been here for a week. There's nothing else you can do. So I flew to Baltimore, feeling a little weird about it. And then the Ringo Awards go up. And I've been nominated before. Spencer and Locke, my first book, was nominated 5 times. And Volume 2 was nominated a 6th time. And my book, Going to the Chapel, was also nominated for a couple years back. So I was not expecting anything out of that. I remember distinctly they were at our award category. And I was mid-text with my girlfriend. She stayed home to watch our puppy. And I was like, well, they're at our category. There's no way we're going to win this. And they announced the OZ. And it was so surreal, It was certainly a big turnaround for my week. But it was such an incredible honor. I knowing especially that it was a book that was self-published, that it was a book that, the direct market didn't see our value. And now we've got the award to prove it. Yeah. So I couldn't be more thrilled, especially in that category where I feel like that really, there was no one creator on this book that sort of stole the spotlight here. This was a team effort. And so, it's really nice to be able to say that not only am I a Ringo Award-winning writer, but Ruben Rojas is a Ringo Award-winning artist. Whitney Kogar is a Ringo Award-winning colorist. Dave Hopkins is a Ringo Award-winning letterer because of everything they did on that Kickstarter. So, I remember saying I was so shell-shocked during all this, and I spent most of the night shell-shocked. But I do remember saying, sometimes they say comics will break your heart, but sometimes comics will love you back. And those are the kinds of moments that I really, anytime I'm feeling down, anytime I'm feeling discouraged, anytime I'm feeling, upset about the life that I've chosen for myself, I remember that night. And I remember that, like, there are good times in this industry. If you work hard and you try to play fair and you get a little lucky. And that's something I'll always be grateful for.
Well, one of the things that I'll add for those of you who aren't familiar with the Ringo Awards, you should follow their social media, because you as a fan can nominate anything for a Ringo Award.
Yeah, including Scout's Honor, which is eligible for Ringos this year from Aftershock.
Vote for Scout's Honor, nominate it, and vote for it. But you as a fan can nominate, you as a fan can vote. And I think that's one of the things, like, everybody talks about how, the Eisners are the pinnacle. And I don't want to shit on the Eisners, right? Because they're all good in their own right. I am still shocked that Kelly Eisner Thompson's Black Widow won it. But I love that series. But in that same vein, I like following the Ringo Awards because I like seeing if my thumb is on the similar pulse to that of the other fans like me. And I like, I liked especially seeing when you won for the OZ, knowing what I know about you, how much of a comic fan you are, that had to mean something, not just a validation for getting an award in a shitty week, but like your people came home to roost, and then your people turned people onto your book, and then the committee, who will also get a vote and also gets input on that, were like, oh, fuck yeah, the people are right.
Yeah.
And that's like, as a government teacher, where I have to get to the, you think I'm going to tell you your vote matters. Let's talk statistics and see how statistically insignificant your vote is in a general election, unless it's a local office. Like, that's different with the Ringo Awards, because that's one of those things that people don't know that they can nominate and vote for people for. And I think once, especially during the pandemic, that more fans were like, wait, I can go, I love this book, they should get an award.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the coolest things in the world, where we can sing praises, to cancel out the people who will troll on social media. But I like how it can end in something tangible, like an award nomination or a book. So, and it's good that it helped turn the shitty week around. Like,
so yeah, it was really heartening, and I think kind of one of the highlights of my career. That Ringo Award, we have it in my living room. I see it every day, and it really keeps me motivated. I'm so grateful, and especially for that book where we put it together through sheer force of will.
Yeah.
And the reason it exists is because of the fans, and the fans only.
And that's got to be a good fuck you a little bit to the industry, where you shop the book around and they're like, pass.
Well, it's, I never try to be spiteful, but it's just, it was nice. It was just kind of knowing that we did it all on our own. And it really,
and that what you believed was true to the fans,
Yes.
I know this is good.
Yeah. I'm not at that stage in my career yet where I can just get something instantly greenlit. And I do know that there are creators that are in that position, and that's I'm envious of them. I'm not there yet, though. I need to still pay my dues. I need to.
It's funny. I listened to a podcast today, very similar, where it was, they were talking about how, once someone gets so high in the business, they just kind of you almost need people to tell you it's a bad idea to see it through.
Sure.
If you know it's good. But they're like, once you get up there, everybody's a yes man. Every idea is good. And then you just saturate the market with kind of yes men.
Yeah, I just,
diluted stuff.
I want to make sure that I'm swinging as big as I can. Yeah. And I know that, sometimes my vision doesn't align with other people's, and but I got to stay true to that vision. And
exactly.
I want to write evergreen books. I want to write books that you don't need to have a PhD in continuity to read. It's so easy to preach to the choir. I want converts. And so that's kind of the mentality that I go through with my books is, is there like a cool high concept that would just be inherently interesting in its own? That, you don't have to be super well versed in comics. Every comic is someone's first. I'd like for it to be mine. So that's kind of where I'm going for. And that's why I keep bouncing from genre to genre, is because I want to have something for everybody. I want to, I want the Baskin Robbins approach.
Yeah,
I want 31 flavors and something for everybody.
Well, and I like how you were able to pigeonhole your voice, but none of that mentioned a stylistic niche, which is different from a lot of creators.
I get restless, as I've said before, and so that's what I love about comics is I don't write any particular project at once. I'm doing kind of this cool science fantasy, with Savage Avengers right now. And meanwhile, I kind of did this kind of cool sort of round robin structure for, of this globe trotting action thing. And I just wrapped up in kind of this very philosophical sci-fi thing. That's also a little bit of a thriller. And I'm working on a horror project that's sort of next to my docket right now. I got to turn in a script for a horror book that's coming out later this year. Nice. And that's what I love about comics is I get to just flex different muscle groups, and it's never the same thing on any particular.
Yeah. It's good to have creative ADD.
Yeah, a little bit.
I say your perpetual creative restlessness. And you love doing mashups, so it's there's an endless amount of things you could do.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it really keeps me energized and invigorated. And I know statistically, I've been really lucky with my hit rate right now for my comics. I know one day I'm going to put something that just doesn't connect, and
Yes, I mean, some say lucky. I mean, maybe it's just
it happens,
everything's good.
But the way that my process is right now, I feel good about the books that I'm putting out, and that's ultimately like that's the thing for me. Like I said, I don't do well with compromise.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky that I really haven't had to do much in the way of compromising on my books, and so that's why I'm a good salesman for them. Is because I believe in my stuff in every fiber of my being, and that's why I stay enthusiastic about it.
Yeah. All right. I want to hop to NWO Comics, this question that I answered a little bit on your behalf by going, this dude just dropped some knowledge. What kind of books do you collect? I know you do.
Yeah.
I know you read a lot. What is
I read
your
a lot. I mean,
hunt?
My guilty confession is I am mostly a digital reader because I live in an apartment in Los Angeles, so my space is a little limited. But yeah, I've got I think 3 or 4 Billy bookshelves worth of trades in my office upstairs. And yeah, for me, I mean, the books that I really dig, of course, like I love my superhero books. I've been reading. What have I been reading lately? Like I read this week, I read the new Captain America #0.
I didn't get mine. I'm pissed.
Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly, I really like those guys a lot. They've been very nice to me as I've been kind of coming up the Marvel ladder. So I was really excited to support their new venture. Oh, that's so nice of you. Thank you so much for saying that, buddy. What's the furthest place from here? Really digging that. Poserverse is a superlative writer. I really like him a lot. Tom Taylor, loving what he's doing on Dark Knights of Steel. Nightwing is really cool. Human Target. Tom King is, I know sometimes he gets flack for his writing, but I think he takes such great big swings. He does such fun literary stuff, and it's something that I always, that's something I kind of try to emulate a little bit. No two issues that he writes reads the same. I think that's just really cool. And I thought it was a real honor when I won my Ringo. It was actually Tom King and Mitch Gerrits presented that award.
Oh, sweet.
Nice.
Our first nominations was when Mr. Miracle and Batman Elmer Fudd came out. And I remember telling people to vote for us because I said I know there was no way we were going to win, but I'd love to be on the same ballot as Mr. Miracle. So yeah, and then I like my classic stuff too. Anytime I find like a '90s Batman trade that I don't have, I really habitually scoop that up. But yeah, I'm trying to think what else I've been reading.
What would be a top 3 single issue Grail? What would be the top 3 for you?
You saw a book in the wild,
I have to have this.
What would you get yelled at by both your partner and your dog at for buying?
Money is no option.
Money's
it's out there.
For me, probably be original art rather than a. But let me think. Sorry, I've never been asked that before. I've never thought of it that way. Sorry. Every idea I think of, I'm like, you have that in trade.
Yeah.
I guess. Hold on, I'm still thinking about it.
Poser, you don't even want to see
I feel like, I think Amazing Fantasy 15 for sure.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's like my favorite character in pop culture. Let's see. It's like everything I think of is like such a trash answer, and it's like you have that in trade. Like you don't.
Yeah.
You don't need a copy of Batman 600. Like, you have that in trade, man, and nobody loves Azrael the way that you love Azrael.
I keep showing my 300 because it just came in the mail the other day, and I paid a criminally insane low price for it, and it's like,
yeah. So I'll show you. I'm. This is for the next.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope.
Hold on, I'll make you big, but you might have to get rid of your
Let me get rid of
background.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
I know. It's so funny that you had to show that book because I was like, oh, I'm getting set up for.
I feel like that Hulk Steranko cover, I probably would that kind of classic one. Yeah. I think I've been trying to homage that cover for a long time, and we haven't really found the right fit for it yet. I guess whatever the Craven's Last Hunt cover of him crawling out of the grave. I love that.
Oh, that's a good one.
And then you know what? I guess for the third one, it was the issue of Jim Lee's X-Men. It was the cover with Wolverine, Cap, and Black Widow. You know, that really speaks to me. I mean, I think everything else, I either have it, it's like a childhood fave. You know? Any of the Fatal Attractions comics, love those. Any of the Age of Apocalypse comics, love those. But I have most of those in trade. So I think it would have to be something with history. But you know, I think it's also, you'd have to ask that will change. I think the longer that, the thing I love most about writing at Marvel is that you're right. You know, it's a sense of history. You know, you're writing for something that's big, and you're adding a brick to the house of ideas. And I think I see people like Dan Slott, for example. You know, him writing Spider-Man was like a life dream for him.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that's sort of the advantage of writing characters like the Savage Avengers is like there's less continuity to be intimidated by. But I think if I ever wrote one of those big characters, I would gravitate towards something in their history. You know, like if I ever got to write Doctor Strange, you know, I think there would probably be a moment in Strange's history that I would.
Well, I think that would be the only other question I would ask you before we pivot to Scout's Honor, the OZ, Spencer and Locke, and go into the chapel. If Savage Avengers opens more doors at Marvel for you, what is your heart of hearts fanboy next project?
Yeah, Strange. That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Doctor Strange. So I don't know if I don't think I'd mentioned this, but kind of the way that I taught myself how to write. I was working my day job at a newspaper, and I realized I did an interview with Greg Pak, and he told me that most writers suck when they start out, and you're allowed to. This is a craft that you're learning, kind of like building a chair. You know, it's not one of those you have it or you don't. And so I wrote a short script every day. 6 to 8 pages. They often sucked. You know, that's okay. I just finished. You know, and I learned from them. But I also occasionally wrote some fan scripts to kind of just, you know, it's easier. It's a little bit of like the training wheels, you know, when you're starting out, because you know these characters and you know the voice. You don't have to come up with characters on your own. And some of the fan scripts I wrote Shazam, I wrote Doctor Strange, and I wrote Avengers. And what's so fun is that on that roster, on my Avengers roster that I had written, Cloak and Dagger and Daredevil were on that roster.
Nice.
So that was 2009.
That's huge for you.
So, you know, dreams do come true. So keep writing. But yeah, Strange. I would love to write Doctor Strange. I have a pitch that's like burning in my back pocket for Doctor Strange. I'd also love to write Iron Man. I think he'd be really cool to write. You know, and I would love to write the main Avengers book someday. I mean, Jason Aaron's doing a tremendous job on it, and I have no idea. You know, I'm sure he's probably on that for the long haul. But I would love to write the main Avengers at some point. They're just a fun, iconic group. But yeah, Strange is at the top of my list.
Nice.
There's such cool stuff that can be done with him, and I just love him as a
Mhm.
character. And the same way that I've sort of seen Cloak and Dagger, I see Stephen Strange. There's a really cool angle for him, and I think when that angle is found, people are going to really realize what an amazing character he is.
And he's got great support characters too.
Yes,
I
he
mean,
does.
so yeah, that would be a fun one to see, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're the first person to kind of mention writing little scripts every day.
Yeah.
In the same way that, like, you go to Instagram and can see a bunch of artists go, like, here's my warm-up sketch.
Yeah.
Do you do the same kind of thing as part of your writing process? Like, get a little bit of tangential pre-writing
Not
out
anymore.
to get yourself in the mood?
So the way I kind of do it now, I always say bad writing is better than no writing. You just kind of you churn. It's panning for gold, and the more you do it, sort of the more gold you get versus the more crap you get. And so the way that I kind of do things is less of a warm up. It's more of I write dessert first. I don't write sequentially.
Okay.
I tend to break down my scripts as much as humanly possible. Like I write a very detailed outline, and then I break it down page to page, and then I break each page down panel to panel, and then once I've done that, I dialogue it. And the dialogue is usually the hardest part for me. That's kind of where the themes are coming out. That's where sort of the story is really kind of clicking together. And so I tend to write out of order, where I'm like, for example, my first book, Spencer and Locke, one of the first things I thought of was a car chase. So I'm like, all right, car chase, wrote that down. And I kind of bounce out of order. I tend to I like to come up with the ending as close to the beginning as I can. That way I sort of have an end destination that I know I'm kind of headed to. But sometimes it doesn't quite work out that way. And sometimes you kind of have to build a little bit of head of steam just to get a sense of the world before you know where you're headed.
That makes sense to me as a teacher, though, because one of the things that they teach is like design-based learning. So you need to know what questions you want to ask kids on a test or an assessment at the end.
Yeah.
Before you can get there. So the moment you were like dessert first, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Because you have to know what you want to do, what you want your payoff to be, especially in a story arc, to make sure you get all the necessary elements to get there.
Yeah, well, and my thinking is also hard pages are always going to be hard, but if you build up a good head of steam, if you build up some momentum, you tend to break them down a little faster. Whereas if you're just trying to beat down the hard stuff first, it's exhausting, and then you're exhausted for all the easy stuff. So you might as well just start in the easy stuff, and then you can kind of work your way to the harder stuff. So I guess that's sort of my equivalent of a warm up these days. It's one of those things. At least right now, I'm juggling a decent amount of projects. I'm juggling. Let's see. I wrapped up a project last week, and I'm sort of putting the finishing touches on another project this week, and then juggling Savage Avengers and another project. And still kind of doing production work on the previous two projects. I'm pretty booked. I've been the last 2 months, I think I've turned in a script a week every single week. And so you don't really have time to dawdle. And you also don't really have time to second guess yourself.
Sure.
You sort of write the thing as best as you can. And that for me, it's all about keeping it sustainable. It's very rare that I marathon through a whole script in a day, but my thinking is, well, if I can churn through 4 pages every single day, at least, that means it's a script done every week, and I build out, I tell myself every week, this is what you're working on this week. And I kind of just juggle my schedule.
Well, I think this is a perfect segue into the question that Jelly wanted to ask.
Yeah.
And I have to go pee. See you
in a second,
fellas.
Well, now that you're here, Jelly, if you want to ask it out loud.
Yeah. So you spoke earlier tonight about your kind of history in media as a student, doing your screenwriting, directing, and stuff like that. Are you able to just leave the artists alone, or do you put a lot of do you see visions of each panel, how you would like it framed?
It's very much a conversation. My scripts are pretty Spartan. They're very much like in the Tom King style. If you've ever read a Tom King script, where he's like, Mr. Miracle looks out the window. Like, I kind of do that. But when I'm writing a script, I do tend to try to visualize like how the panels are going to stack, like what I consider to be a big moment in this page versus like what are some smaller things that could possibly share a tier together. I always think that at max, you're getting you have 5 tiers to each page. That's at the absolute maximum. Really, you want to try to keep it at 4 tiers, and it's sort of a combination of like you have 2 to 3 panels on a particular tier, and then you might have one big thing that takes up 2 tiers or something along those lines.
Yeah.
For me, where I have the most conversation with my collaborators is in the thumbnail stage. And for those who aren't aware, I'm a little inside baseball with it. So the production of a comics page, you have your script, of course, and then you lay out your panels, and then what they do is the thumbnail stage. It's the stick figure version. Some artists are a little bit more detailed with their thumbnails than others. Some are very loose with it, but it's just to sort of give what's the sense of the composition here of a particular page. No 12 to 16 panel pages on Savage Avengers. I did not want to kill Carlos. There is a 9-panel grid on in issue 3. That's a little complicated, but that was a super fun one. But yeah, the thumbnail stage is where I I got off track. There's the thumbnail stage. It's you're figuring out the composition basically of how
you're getting your perspective, your objects kind of.
Yeah, you're just sort of you're just saying, okay, this character is here, this character is here. This makes sense. Does this reveal everything we needed to? And then they do the penciling, which is sort of things are a little bit more locked. Those I try to be a little bit more sparing with the notes. That is sort of, hey, like this sword, could we have this sword be on fire? For example. Or hey, this person's face, could we tweak their expression a little bit? I try to avoid redraws at that point, although sometimes they do happen. And then inks are really, it's kind of, oh hey, this character, there's a thing in their costume that we forgot to mention. Can we tweak that? We patch. Very, very rarely there's a thing that doesn't quite hit the mark that we're like, anyway, we can take another pass, but that's pretty rare. I try to do like 90% of my edits in the thumbnail stage, and then 9% in the pencil stage, and then like very, very rarely in the inking stage of just something like totally just did not work. But it's always a conversation. It's always a back and forth, because I also know that like I want to give artists a chance to sort of strut their own bit, and oftentimes they will have an idea that is better than what I had on the page. I'm working with an artist right now on a project that I think is going to be announced next month, who's called all sorts of audibles in the script, and they're all additive. I'm like, okay, yeah, like that's cool.
Yeah.
But also like as the writer, you're kind of the one, you're the navigator, If it's a road trip, your artist is the one behind the wheel and you're the one kind of steering. And so knowing where all the bodies are buried, you can also explain to your artist, oh, hey, because we're going to do this, this, and this in issue 3 or 4, we got to establish this thing right here. And sometimes I know there are some writers who are a lot more with the scripting, where they're able to sort of really dig down in the reference and all that. For me, I got to keep the momentum going, so I write my direction pretty sparse. But I think that way it feels a little bit more organic. What's the name of that project? You'll find out in a month. I think
David wants to bully you in the same way that
we got to try all
when we interviewed.
I think they'll be announcing it in a month, if not a month, 2 months from now. But
when we got to freak out over Nottingham,
David, we got to.
We may have asked
poked
David
at him for like an hour.
Yeah, and
that's right.
Every roundabout way we could get him to slip up.
It's like, will you get this?
We
tested that.
I won't say, what I'm working on. Suffice to say, I'm working on a nice combination of licensed and original stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, so yeah, it's a conversation, and every artist is different. I mean, it all comes down to their style and their level of experience. And
so with Savage Avengers with Carlos, so
yeah,
his art styles, what I think you said earlier, and I would totally agree, very cinematic.
Yeah.
Was it easy with him? Did he see things the same way you saw? Had in your mind's eye?
Carlos is a spectacular collaborator. First off, he's a Conan super fan. So like he's really enthusiastic about this project. And I can tell that he's hungry, and that's how I try to approach my books, as hungry as possible. And so yeah, it's one of those things that like we've had a lot of conversations about this book, especially especially at the beginning when we were still kind of like finding our feet, both as collaborators, but also like kind of getting to know this team a little bit. I wrote Carlos like a big long document separately of just being like, hey bud, like I want you to know sort of here's what I'm thinking about all these characters and here's where I'm headed with them. So you have like kind of a global sense of where everybody's at.
True.
And yeah, it's one of those things like he'll send thumbnails and like sometimes I'll realize like, oh, like sometimes I'm just a little over ambitious on that page and like we probably can't fit all that detail and like make it look good. So like I'll be like, okay, like now that I see the thumbnail on this, I can tell you like you don't have to worry about this thing, don't worry about it. This is the important thing here. I know, for example, that's not really spoiling anything. I had a panel where Elektra was mentioning some exposition from a previous issue. And we had a flashback of a whole bunch of stuff going on behind her from the previous issue. And I was like, oh, we don't need like half that. Like, I have like the whole team doing stuff behind her in flashback. And I was like, we could just focus on like 2 characters and save you some hassle.
Right.
But no, he's fantastic. And he's so gracious and such a kind guy to work with. I really like, he is, you say you have to be fast, you have to be good, and you have to be nice. And usually you have to choose between 2. I don't think we have to choose between 2 with Carlos. I mean, he just, the other day he sent I think it was maybe earlier this week or late last week, he sent me like 7 pages in a row. So no, he's the full package, and I love working with him, and he's going to be a huge superstar. So I'm really glad I get to write his coattails now.
Oh well, I will say that I think the 2 of you, seeing both of you work, it might be a mutual riding each other, and I
think this might end up being a dream team.
Yeah, because you both are equally as hungry to do things. So I want to talk about your indie work now.
Sure.
Because with Scout's Honor and Spencer and Locke going to the chapel, and then with, I'll say 95% of the OZ, you are playing more in your own universe, right? Like, the OZ is the exception to that, where you're rebranding established characters.
Sure.
To tell that story. So, what is the difference between playing in your own universe where you have your own creative licenses versus working on a Marvel property where you have to worry about, even if your approach is not like, I have to worry about all of the continuity and you have to have a PhD in Flash Thompson to know it. I'm going to guess, especially when you talked about, Tom's influence on as an editor.
Yeah.
What's it like being able to play more in your own sandbox without having to worry about an artificially imposed lore ceiling or a limitation ceiling on what you can't do with an established character yet?
So I would counter that with, ultimately, I like limitations. Like, I like having boundaries because that's what you play off of.
Okay.
That's why I like comics so much. Is, for example, you kind of know I have 20 to 22 pages, usually one or the other. For my creator owns, I tend to lean towards 22, although really 20 is the metric I should be aiming for. but you have 22 pages, and I know I can fit, X amount per page. So I know that kind of a rough guesstimate of how much I can fit in a story without my artist hunting me down and killing me. And so, having sort of an editorial thing to work within, like, I'm like, okay, like that just means that kind of narrows it down a little bit further in terms of like what kind of story I can tell and within those constraints. I've always found that I've sort of been in a little bit of a middle ground, because all of my work has been riffing on pop culture. Spencer and Locke was What If Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City.
Yeah.
The OZ being like Mad Max meets the Wizard of Oz. Scout's Honor being this post-apocalyptic Boy Scout cult. Like, there are expectations to that that you have to play towards. I think it's one of those things that there are different types of stress doing it all on your own. I learned pretty quick that I didn't want to be an editor because that's all of the traffic cop stuff. I tolerate it in my creator mode work. It's not something that I especially relish doing, but like when you're an indie guy, like that's the role. It's usually the writer kind of spearheading the project. They find the artist, they finance the book, they're doing all their own editorial, their own publicity, what have you. And so those types of projects, I spend a fraction of the time writing it, and I spend a lot of time sort of like, okay, like where are we at on these pages? I got to give notes on pages, I got to give notes on colors. What's the lettering look like? Okay, we got to make some lettering tweaks. I spend a lot of time playing traffic cop on those. I do think those books turn out really well, but like that is a lot of work to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas, say, a book like Savage Avengers, I feel like it's easier in that regard, where like I still give notes on pages, but I don't have to worry about like, well, when is Carlos going to turn in his pages? That's my editor's job.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about, well, who's going to find a colorist for Carlos. Carlos already has worked with our colorist, and like Marvel has worked with our colorist, so I don't have to worry about that.
That makes sense.
And it's nice knowing that like my creative team, like I know they're going to turn in their work in a timely fashion because like it's Marvel, like that's the level you got to be at.
Yeah.
And so it's a different type of work. I think for indie stuff, there's something fun about like you're just doing your own thing,
Sure.
My work has often been appreciated retroactively. It's appreciated when it's out. Rarely in the pitch stage. It's often, I think Scout's Honor is the first and only time. I guess Savage Avengers and Scout's Honor were the first and only times that I'd ever gotten a book across in the first pitch.
Okay.
Like it's just, I shopped Spencer and Locke and going to the chapel all around town, and like I got one yes, and that was enough, So it is kind of nice just kind of doing your own thing. Like it feels a little bit more like a garage band, where but I like doing both, it's like doing like arm day versus chest day, or arm day versus leg day. It's definitely different muscle groups, and they have their own different pros and cons to it.
But it's got to be nice at times where you're just worrying about writing.
Yeah.
And then communicating really nice with the artist, going like, yeah, these match up, or hey, can we tweak this?
Yeah.
Instead of I'm writing and now whipping the whole team.
Yeah, versus the matchmaking especially is a challenge. It's one that I take really seriously. And no creator-owned book that I have done besides Scout's Honor was the first colorist I approached the last colorist that wound up being in the book.
Sure.
Like you want to find the right colorist for the right line art.
Yeah.
So it's nice not having to worry about that on every project, but it's like, it's certain projects you want to worry about that, and so I think it's going to be a combination for me for a long time. Especially, unless I find like a creator owned editor who really speaks like that we're really on the same page. Until then, like, I'll be the guy, and that's fine with that. The books that I have put together on my own, I think, are some of the proudest things I've worked on. Particularly Spencer and Locke, and particularly the OZ. The OZ especially, I think, is probably the most beautiful thing I've ever worked on. I feel a lot of pride knowing that, like, I was kind of the ringleader behind that. And I think that really kind of really opened us up to putting out something really special.
I agree with that. So the question I will ask about all Spencer and Locke, the OZ going to the chapel, and Scout's Honor. Is there more for any of those in the future? I know the answer to the OZ is yes.
Yeah, we will be doing another Kickstarter for the OZ. The goal is later this year, maybe October. It'll really depend on. It'll really depend on kind of, how fast can we fulfill the second one? Given the supply chain issues and paper shortages and my workload, and also just how fast Ruben Rojas can kind of get a critical mass of pages together. We don't want to kickstart this before we're ready. But we will be doing another Kickstarter for that. So rest assured on that. Let's see. Spencer and Locke, and it's kind of a thorny situation right now. We want to do more. We're going to need the rights back before we do that.
Okay.
And so there's really only so much I can discuss right now, because that's all a little bit in limbo right now.
Can I ask you to remind me who published it, or should I just Google it so we don't spill a cup of tea?
Yeah, no, we'd printed that with Action Lab.
Okay.
All I'll say is, we really enjoyed our partnership, when it was functioning. And
well, my response to that, without you having to fight anything else, is hashtag free Crash and Troy.
Yeah. There's it's unfortunately no longer a sustainable partnership. And so
that's a bummer.
We all want to tell more of that, but
you got to wait until you have control and don't have to worry about a third party.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. TBD.
So is that the downside of something you get to do on Kickstarter versus traditional, like publishing through Action Lab or Aftershock or anybody else who says yes, or Marvel, where you might have more to say, but if the publisher is like, nah, you can't do anything.
So much,
I guess I didn't realize
as it's not so much of that as much as just like there are things I can't really discuss.
That's a fair answer.
But just there have sort of been some basic things that haven't been met in a while over there.
Okay.
That's sort of the reason why we could. I'm sure they wouldn't have said no if we had given them another volume, but it would have been, I think, flushing money down the toilet.
I understand that. And
we would love to free Spencer and Locke, and
that'll be the new hashtag.
Now I understand.
Put that on a do a Kickstarter for that third volume. We would love to do that, and it's just we kind of have to wait for the dust to settle as far as that's concerned. And as far as Scout's Honor, I felt like that was a complete story. I agree. It's
I
not
want
to
more.
say, like, I couldn't.
I want more.
If we found the right story, I could see doing like a one shot
Okay.
over there,
Prestige
especially
size.
focusing on Dez. I feel like
Yeah.
he's a really fun supporting character who I think he could have an interesting story of his own. But it's really we haven't discussed it.
Okay.
My workload's been pretty tight lately. I've talked with Aftershock about like finding new things to work on, and we've had a couple ideas that we haven't quite found like the right thing yet.
Yeah.
Write your congressman. If enough people like really want more Scouts honor, I'm sure there's a world we could revisit it. We don't have any plans currently, but it's definitely a never say never kind of moment.
Well, that's been what, like, I mentioned it earlier when you were talking about needing a PhD in lore.
Yeah.
And Jelly and I and J1 and Cole have talked about this at length, that is the blessing and the curse of the 6-issue indie arc, is like Scouts Honor wrapped up perfectly. Like, I read that last issue and I was like, fuck, god damn it, I'm not gonna get any more of this. But I want more. So I think that, like, that's the good and the bad thing, is that, for someone who has creative ADD, it lets you flex those muscles, get a type of story out to different readers. And I think that's one of the things that, as a fan of a writer or a fan of a particular story, like, I have to look at my indie comics and go, like, this is not, like, Harry Potter is the worst reference that I can come up with, but it's like, I can't expect 9 400-page books for this series because it's not right for the story.
Yeah.
And that's the hard comparison to other literary means where, like,
I always think of that Batman quote, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yep.
And that's always my worry about these things, especially with Spencer and Locke. You see like that we're sort of waiting. We've done a second volume and we've sort of are in a holding pattern on starting a third for sort of reasons that are kind of beyond our control.
Yeah.
And I also found that I loved writing Spencer and Locke too. We could have wrapped that in a first volume. It felt like twice the work for just about as much return as the first one. And my thinking is, well, if I have to do a choice between doing twice the work for the same amount of return or just doing something else, I'll probably do something else. And then just sort of, if I'd rather leave them wanting more than people saying, oh, he's lost it.
Yeah, it makes me think of that Simpsons when they're like beating the horse and the kids, stop it, mister, he's already dead. It's just, and there's something to be said about the current climate, like coming out of the pandemic as people that had so much time, you're just consuming content.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I want more Scouts honor, but it's good. It was done.
Yeah.
Like I should just be happy with what it was, but it's like, well, I liked it. I want more.
I also see it as
I want more. God damn it, Jelly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna beat the horse, mister.
Yeah.
It's a tightrope as well. I think that's part of it. I feel like I'm rolling the dice every time I'm doing a book. So I like to kind of get in and get out because, then I know I can pull this off. Whereas the longer you stick around, like the more likely, you might. I want to push back my my inevitable strikeout as late in my career as humanly possible. So I really only will consider sequels if I feel really passionate about it.
Is this your way of telling me that for as much shit as Jelly and I have talked on Nick Spencer and what he did as Spider-Man, like, your career goal is, like, at one point, I want to be Nick Spencer on
Yeah.
Spider-Man, and then fuck you, bitches, I'm gone.
No, never. Listen. I love working at Marvel. I will be there for as long as they'll have me. It's been honestly, I thought it would be more chaotic. Knock on wood. I've actually felt really supported and really happy working there. The artists I've worked with on Savage Avengers and my Elektra story, Elektra Black, White, and Blood, and my upcoming Moon Knight Black, White, and Blood story that I'm working with Leo Romero on. I'm happy with all of it. Oh yeah, that was announced. That's not news, I promise.
Did I miss that was you and I'm also a piece of shit?
No, Moon Knight.
piece of shit,
they're doing the Black, White, and Blood anthology.
So it's like 3 stories in an issue.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm in issue 2 of that. That's coming out. There was a supply chain delay, so I think it's coming out in June now. Yeah, I've got a story with Leo Romero, and that he's fantastic. I love working with him.
Well, I'll chime in here really fast. We've had a bunch of new folks hop in. Thank you, Airpop Control, and everybody else who has super chatted. Thank you to my shirtless brother from another mother, Big Easy's House Pops, for becoming a new member. If you all hopping in are not familiar with tonight's guest, this is David Pepose, who is releasing, or he's not releasing it, fucking Marvel is releasing it, on May 11th. He is the author of the upcoming Savage Avengers arc, and before that, he did Scout's Honor for Aftershock. He did Spencer and Locke through Action Labs. He did Going to the Chapel. He did the OZ through Kickstarter. That if you are looking for comic books to get in at the ground level on, that for as much as you could go back and listen to this interview from, 10 seconds in and you hear David dropping science on all of us, he is writing comics for people like me who likes comics, cannot remember 30 years of lore on a character, but wants to make me feel like I do. So you should follow at Pepose on Instagram and Twitter. You should check out his website to keep up on all the news, because this Ringo Award-winning author, or part of, I guess the way you sold it earlier, part of a Ringo Award creative team to celebrate the whole book for the OZ. For as much as we've talked about other creators who are blowing it up, David is doing it in that moment, and I think in addition to the other things he's alluded to where he's been like, you might hear about this in a month, he's about to do it with Savage Avengers and make people give a shit about characters that the Thing was hating on about 45 minutes ago.
I get to write you Thing. You're gonna get yours.
You get Deathlock just kicking the Thing in the dick.
I kid. I love the Thing.
The last question I want to ask you, and I think I asked you this when issue 1 of Scout's Honor came out. My store was not cool enough to get the badges that came along with Scout's Honor. So do you have anybody that I can sell a kidney, a kid, holes?
Yeah, I'd hit up Steve Rotterdam. I believe he was coordinating all of our
write that down for you,
badges. So yeah, I'd hit him up. But I will say
I'm gonna do that right now.
Otherwise, we might have. I don't have a ton of copies of the badges of my own, but we do offer them as a Kickstarter tier. So we will have them for the next Kickstarter campaign for the OZ as well.
For the OZ? Oh, sweet.
Well, I'm going to hit up Steve and be ready to back that tier, because if there's one of many things that Jelly and I have in common, we look at Kickstarter projects and go, we can get what kind of dope shit?
Yeah.
Oh, from other shit we like? Let's go!
Yeah.
Go!
Big Easy, I will take my shirt off if you come on. I don't know if I can commit to the other members of the panel. So we'll maybe do that when David leaves. Jelly will take it off.
So if Big Easy comes on next week, I'll do it.
We'll have Big Easy. There you go. Next Thursday we've got topless comic reviews from our. But you got to grow a little bit more of a beard between now and then, Jelly. Like that's where you're slacking in that department. Like you got to at least wear the J1 beard. But
I can do that.
Before we maybe move to talk about a comic book this week that doesn't have your name on it, David, is there anything else you want to talk about to the good folks who have hopped in tonight? And
I mean, I think just following me. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Pepose D. It's just down here below, or David Pepose Comics on Facebook. You can subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pepnews, or you can visit my website at davidpepose.com.
Oh, I needed you to plug for a few more seconds so I could type in the bit.ly.
Beyond that, just keep an eye out. Online. I'm super stoked for Savage Avengers. You can pre-order at your local comic shop. Issue 2 should be available for pre-order for a little bit longer.
I saw cover 3 was released.
Cover 3 was released
I saw it
today. So that should be available for pre-order very soon at your local comic shop. And but that's not all that I have coming out. There's some more stuff coming. We should be having, I think, the first announcement, I think, around this time next month. And then I think something else probably early July. And I think then maybe a third announcement in August or September. So lots of fun stuff coming. But I couldn't be more grateful.
Yeah. And I mean, so there's I tried to get the bit.ly until it converted.
Yeah.
And David talked too fast, but much like we talked about when Travis Gibb has been on here either time, I like David for the same reason I like Travis. He is somebody who is constantly grinding in comics, and you look at them and go, you're how fucking busy, and you tweet about everything else that you have read this week. God damn. So you should follow David's newsletter. You should follow him on Instagram, on Twitter. Go to his website, because I can look at him and be like, what kind of announcement this time next month? And he's gonna go, a book that I will tweet about. Shut the fuck up. And I'll be like, you win.
You'll see it, and I think you'll really dig it. So
I need to pay attention instead of like 6 months after the fact being like,
gotta follow my Twitter.
I just saw a picture that says the Pepose is writing the Savage Avengers, and you go, yeah, dummy, are you on fucking social media? And I'll go, I can't read good. You grew up in Missouri. This is Kansas. We dumb.
Well, I appreciate all your support, and listen, we'll get you on board. No, I thank you guys, and for everyone who's considering Savage Avengers, check us out. I think we've got some really cool stuff coming. So May 11th, only the Savage will survive. So be sure to check us out.
So on May 12th, that's going to be the book of the week, because I ain't famous or fancy enough, y'all, to be able to read a Marvel preview yet. Like, I got to sacrifice 2 of my 3 kids, burn my house to the ground, and acknowledge an Infinity Stone as my Lord and Savior. So on the 12th, you're going to get a day-old reflection on that book, but we're going to go ham. And from the art I've seen and from David's excitement, I'm fucking excited. Jelly has mentioned it as well.
I'm going to start reading it at 9:10.
Yeah.
Because I want to come in hot.
And if it's on Hoopla, like, it's going to get the saga treatment. Like, as soon as something goes live on Hoopla and I'm trapped at school teaching somebody else's devils about government and history things, I'll be like, y'all shut the fuck up. I'm gonna read my stories right now, and let's go. And even I'll pay for it on Comixology, because even though I'm afraid of digital comics, aside from Hoopla, because I can read volumes 2 and 3 of Jerry Dugan's Savage Avengers, which is currently sold out on Amazon, because I'm a cheap bitch who has bowed down to my evil capitalist overlords.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really I appreciate it, and yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. I could have sat here all night and listened to you talk. Like, you great. Like,
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Wouldn't even say.
Yeah,
you're a
now that
hype
we've
man.
held you captive for almost 2.5 hours,
Yeah,
the next time you announce something and I'm like, you want to come in, we don't have to ask you 2.5 hour questions about who you are. I'll be like,
now you got it. Now you got all the exposition.
We'll just link this show.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm stoked, and hopefully we'll have some things that the thing likes.
Cloak and Dagger in the dung.
No. Well, thank you guys so much. My laptop's actually down to 10%, so
and you go deal with the rest of your night on fancy LA time. And you better unplug, because we're going to talk about Nice House on the Lake number 18.
All right. Well, enjoy the book, everybody, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
All right.
What a great fucking dude.
Yeah. And there are times where I'm like, I don't want to do a lot of interviews that I want to just be able to talk about books.
That's why I came back laughing one time, because I was sitting here with my camera off just listening.
Yeah.
And I realized we didn't have to ask hardly any questions.
Yeah. And the people that we've got on are like, yeah, I'll talk about shit at length. And like, one of the best interviews I've ever heard is anybody who has gotten to ask questions to Rodney Barnes. Because you can be like, I'm going to ask you a question, and he's going to just drop science on everybody for like 20, 30 minutes of story. And you're all like, you watch on those shows where like the full panel is sitting there and everybody's just like.
Yeah. No, I felt like that tonight with David. I was just like,
yeah.
Oh,
we got our
like,
comic book
I don't want to
church.
Be inside baseball. I do. Go.
Yeah.
You know, like.
So, I mean.
Fantastic.
In the same vein of everybody we've interviewed up to this point, I like that we've talked to not just students of the game, but fans of the game.
Yeah, historians.
Getting to tell their story, because even if David is writing a Marvel property, you heard him very much say, here's everything that I did to make it my own. Well, and that's not something I'd expect from hearing from my first Big Two creator.
Yeah. Well, and he, just the same as everybody else we've interviewed, started the same place. The same place that everybody's watching this show is at.
Yeah.
I'm just a fan.
Yeah.
You know? And it's just so amazing to see a guy that's just like, was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. This is what makes me happy. And to see him make it to the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
It's heartwarming.
And I'm going to guess in the same vein, like, you hear some people lust after Marvel and DC as the pinnacle, but then we see other people who are like, no, I'm going to write some cool long-term established shit here and do it there. If he's truly got 3 or 4 projects to be announced throughout the rest of the year, I'm going to say that the over-under, like, I'll set the line at 1, that if you think 2 or more projects are going to be Marvel or DC, you can take the over. I'm going to guess that he's doing more indie stuff, and I think that's been the good thing.
So he did allude to one thing that's coming out that sounded like it was going to be another Marvel book.
Oh, well, no, because the Moon Knight had already been announced.
No, it wasn't that. It was something he said he couldn't say. I'd have to go back and look at it, but he alluded to something that was like, it's going to be. a major character or something like that.
One, I don't go back and rewatch a lot of what we've done here because I'm like, I'll remember.
I know I
some
could
of
be
that
speaking
shit.
out of school. I don't remember.
But this is one of the interviews where I want to go back and re-listen just because of the number of amazing sound bites that David said either about writing, about comics, about Marvel. Like this whole interview to me was like I said, comic book church. I learned some shit. I got self-affirmation and shit and gained further faith into the medium. Although, hashtag free Spencer and Luck. All right, so the two books we talked about this week, or wanted to talk about this week, the two people who we thought would be excited about either of them aren't here. So do you want to? I know Cole is going to be.
We can save Nice House on the Lake
for J1.
I don't have a lot of good things to say about 8.
I liked it, but it was a shit show.
It was a major shit show. That's a good way to put it. It was a major shit show.
Yeah.
Crimson Cage 5. Was it 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That final fucking
I would
page.
like Cole here for it.
One Cole in our Discord group, until my Discord got fucking hacked today because I clicked on something like a fucking idiot and they.
Oh yeah, what happened?
I clicked on a fucking link, and they spent like $700 of a Nitro fees, and I was like, I'm a fucking idiot.
God.
But Cole's hot take, if he's still awake, was that Crimson Cage was going to be better than Nice House this week. And it was something that I was pensive about. Whereas, like, I don't see myself necessarily disagreeing with you, but what we've seen from Tynion to this point is that you look at things and go, wait, what the fuck? And he delivers. I agree with Cole that I like Crimson Cage better than Nice House.
100%. I'm not saying Nice House on the Lake was crap, because it wasn't. But it's the same thing from the last issue, where it's just like it was a lot of wait, what? And like I have to go back and read this.
We got a little bit more insight into Walter's power.
Yeah.
Than we've gotten before. And Weiwei's says he doesn't own any. Pick up the trade for the first volume. And I think that will...
I think that came out last week, didn't it?
Yeah.
Or was it 2 weeks ago?
That I would say from volume 1, I would even if the first issue of volume 2 was a shit show, I'd still say it'd be worth like $15-$16 on a volume 1, or
yeah, I think it's like $11.99 or something.
No, I don't know. I don't buy trades that much, but like I would do that, or pick it up on Hoopla or Comixology for a few bucks cheaper.
Yeah, I would definitely pick up the trade of the first volume. I think it's 1 through 5. I would definitely.
Yeah,
it's excellent. It's just getting a bit. Yeah, it's a bit shit showy right now.
Yeah, I think the comparison would be to other Tynion works would be, imagine if like in issue 7 or 8 of Something is Killing the Children, they went on this like weird soliloquy about all of the characters in Archer's Peak. Like, you'd look at it and be like, what the fuck? And, you know, when David talked about him being able to rep into or out of a story, you know that aside from Tynion's Batman run, that he's delivered on a solid arc and arc ending. So I'm going to guess it's crazy with crazy intentions.
Oh yeah, this is all very deliberate. This isn't him like searching for a story. It's all very deliberate. I mean, obviously, but
it would have been nice.
It's just at that point where you're like, okay, I'm at that point where it's like I feel like I wasn't paying attention as close as I needed to, and now I'm having to go back an issue and kind of be like, oh yeah, okay, this is because it's like there's so many things happening
Yeah.
that it's like he's just weaving things back and forth, and
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I may have missed that in the previous issue.
I know what we can talk about because it's been this long since we've been live together. Amazing Spider-Man.
Question mark.
How do you feel?
I don't feel like the arc was over.
Yeah.
I can't say I'm unsatisfied because I feel like because Zeb Wells and Al Ewing are doing
the next volume.
So, and it seems like Marvel is pushing Ben Reilly pretty hard.
But they're pushing Ben Reilly as who he turned into.
Yeah, as the villain.
And if you look at
so I don't
both comicsheatingup.com and Cover Price had it on their rising list. It was Amazing Spider-Man number 3. Because of what I can't think of what the villain's name is.
Yeah,
but you learn that that's who Ben Reilly turned into. And like in the long game, I can be like, that makes a little bit of sense as a setup issue. But when the press for this issue was like, you'll fucking never believe what Peter Parker does and this blah blah blah, and it's like he had to make a choice. He guessed not the choice that he guessed the choice that none of us or all of us would have made and not pick the guy who was his clone. He would pick his lady.
I don't think I wasn't blown away by anything. I don't know. I do like the fact that Ben Reilly turned.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting coming up in the next series.
Yep.
Because I'm trying to
especially think. That there's a Ben Reilly mini going on right now.
Yeah, I haven't read any of that actually, and I was thinking about picking it up because this is the Ben Reilly mini, is it separate or is it because it's supposed to be him?
It's separate, but issue number 3 leaned in a similar direction of like, fuck you, I'm going to do my own thing now.
Yeah. It kind of seemed like it was the continuity of the character was still intact in the miniseries.
Yeah. It's interesting, and we get that book, what, in like 3 weeks?
It got pushed back, I know. I think it got pushed back a week. I want to say it's like the 27th.
No, I'll save more pennies then, because I'm like, I'm going to buy every cover of Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Yeah, I already pre-ordered a couple of them. I don't remember which ones I got. I think I picked up... Oh, I know which ones. Mike Mayhew did a kind of a cool cover. It's got all the villains on it and stuff.
Yeah.
But he was... I think on his store, he was doing his glow-in-the-dark signature. I want to say you got the trade in the Virgin for $75 or something like that. Signed with the COA.
I might have to do that.
Yeah. But he's actually got a lot of exclusive covers on there that are exclusive to Mike Mayhew's studio that I never saw. There's like a Spider-Gwen cover that I was just blown away by.
Ooh. Well, that's the good thing about his website is they're all like, you tell me 2 covers that are signed for $75 I can get 2 covers for $60 from a handful of places with a COA of it being limited to like 12 million.
Yeah, right.
So on the Mayhew ones, I might do that when we're
the
done
Mayhew ones are like 300 and 500. I mean, they're limited runs.
I read this today. Blue and Gold number 8.
I looked at Blue and Gold. I haven't read the other ones, but I was like, damn it, I really should be reading those.
That was a fitting end to a clusterfuck of Blue and Gold.
Wait, no. Blue and Gold's not at the end, is it?
Yeah, this is 8 of 8.
Oh, was it? Oh my gosh. I missed the entire run then.
I tweeted about Philadelphia 21 earlier today.
Picked it up, haven't read it yet.
It is the first issue of comics that I have read in the last 4 years that has left me speechless.
Oh God. Because Philadelphia is 2 issues after the break now?
3.
3? Okay.
Yeah. 1893.
Okay.
Speaking of someone who we might try to interview in the future, so I DM'd Tim Seeley on Instagram like 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he responded over the weekend, "Hey, I didn't know Instagram had messages. Email me." And I'm like, "Fuck, okay. I love it."
Didn't he say he was thinking May sometime?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Gwenverse number 2 was more fun to me than number 1. Only because it was like... Number 1 made you think it might be like character by character in the issues.
Yeah.
And number 2 was like, hold my beer.
Yeah. No, we're dragging everybody through this.
And then issue number 2 made me go, the fuck's going to happen in issue number 3?
No, it's fantastic. I love how they I thought the Thor was going to sit back and then they're going to move on to the Captain America. No. Everybody's getting drugged through everything.
Get in the fucking car. This is Bill and Ted meets Spider-Man.
Yes, it's going to be hilarious. As the further this goes on, the funnier it's going to get. I love it. It's fantastic.
And then the last one.
Primos,
did you read this one today?
Yep.
Did you love it?
I loved it.
So if you haven't, Jelly and I have gelled together on more books than I think either of us thought we would throughout this process.
Yeah.
And Primos has been one of those books, we're both going to be concerned as fuck as how it gets wrapped up in issue 4.
I can't even see how this is going to get wrapped up.
But every other AWA issue or series recently has been, instead of saying it's done, Crimson Cage, Crimson Cage fucking done, Homeboy dead. And if you've read Macbeth, Homeboy fucking dead. But everything else has been end of volume 1.
So, okay, so he's dead.
Yeah.
What was it Sherry? Was that his girlfriend?
She did.
So
sorry, wait. Hold on. Let me put this up before we talk about Crimson Cage. He dead. He way dead. She dead. She about broke neck dead.
So okay. So at the end of that, they pulled her. So she goes for that superplex off the top rope.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Don't do it." The big girl she's fighting. Don't do it. Don't do it. Superplex, crack.
Yeah.
But then, so I feel like this is a J1A Bob, thought bubble kind of thing. So they're talking.
Yeah.
She's talking to her like she's alive. "Don't worry, sweetie. You're going to be okay." And she's responding to her, but it's is she conscious at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this her answering her in her way out, purgatory, kind of the last bit of consciousness that she has left? Or Because
Yeah.
I mean, he knew immediately, like, she's dead. She's not coming back. She's dead.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do it. We're gonna do this match no matter what.
Especially in looking at the dialogue after the match, where it's like he lost the title and that's what's liberated him. And as he's getting fucking stabbed and carved
Yeah.
apart and everything else, and he's just like,
yeah,
like he's dying
Yeah.
happy because he's free from the curse of the women,
yeah.
the
three sisters.
yeah. Excuse me, the Sisters of the Swamp, yeah. But like Primos, I feel like issue 3 answered a lot of questions of like how they came together, how they met with people. Still a little confused over who the big giant hulking bastards are, but issue number 3 was the coming out story of the female cousin. Like we got each of them in 3, so you know, based on how this is set up, is that issue 4 is going to have a cliffhanger for another arc.
It has to.
And I think I'm okay with that, knowing that AWA's pattern has been like, we're not going to leave you cliffhanging from volume to volume. Like, you can tell by their story writing patterns that there's going to be a second arc.
Yeah, for sure. But there's a lot of things that are out there that have to be wrapped up. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think the hulking guys they just seem like they're basic sentries.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see a lot with them that needs to be wrapped up, but I mean, we haven't even really gotten into the team.
Yeah.
Together. Like it seems like this whole thing is more of how the team came together and not like it's almost a prequel.
Yeah, like David said earlier about how his issue 1 and part of issue 2 is how the team came together.
Yeah.
That's where we're at 3 issues in, and I'm okay with that if this cover just said issue 3 instead of 3 of 4.
Yeah. Well,
like,
I didn't notice that.
I mean, they've all said of 4 on the cover.
Yeah. Is it picked up for more?
I'm gonna.
Do we need to get Al Madrigal on here and make him tell us?
Yeah. Tim Seeley told me he didn't know that DMs on Instagram were a thing. Al Madrigal didn't respond.
Oh,
he's too busy writing new jokes about cholos.
Dude, he's what's Bill Burr's All Things Comedy?
Yeah.
I mean, he's humongous. So I know we got into Crimson Cage. Nice House on the Lake we just touched upon, but I know J1 wants to. I'm sure he'll fanboy out for it, so we can wait till next week to get in on that.
Where'd I put the rest of there are 4 or 5 books that I hadn't read this week, and I gotta see where I set them. I haven't read Catwoman.
I'm trying to think what I read. I read some good stuff this week, and I can't remember what they are now. I got to look what was.
Yeah, there's nothing that I've read this week where I'm like, God damn it, this was awful.
Got to look through if I can remember.
Nope, that's all my Noctera that I got to put away. This is how disorganized I am. They're fucking right here. Yeah, I haven't finished Catwoman. Flash.
Did not read.
Wolverine 20. Armorclads. Armorclads 1 was a fun read. If you didn't look at number 1, I'm excited to see how number 2 plays out. And then Avengers 55. Those are my 5 that are left from this week.
Oh, what else did you read this week? Because I read a whole bunch of. I read a lot of indies this week, and I can't remember what I read.
Primos, Philadelphia, Nice House, Crimson Cage, Hulk, War on Weed, We Live. We Live number 2 was a solid through issue where you started to see the new creature threat. The art in that one was really good.
Yeah, it reminded me of Eastman a little bit, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Slumber number 2 was fucking all kinds of bodies in refrigerators. That was shocking and fun. And that's it. Like, this was a light stack week for me. And I still have like $20 or $10 from 2 weeks ago to crack into.
Oh, there was a book. Oh my god.
Let me see where
I have
where's my
literally a long box of stuff to put away that I don't even want to start cycling through to remember what I read.
Here's my variant and other stack. So I got the Gwenom Thor cover. Like every fucking Wolverine cover that Jason had left. I love this one. That one.
I love the
sick.
one through the blinds. I don't know what it is about that one.
Well, there was a cool ASM cover recently that was like that too. That I liked a lot.
Oh, did you read The Collector, Unit 731?
No, I don't even know what that is.
Okay.
You should
I'll
send me
DM
that on IG to look
I'll
at.
IG it to you.
I picked up Robin's number 6 only because Baltimore Revis is going to be my LCS on Free Comic Book Day.
Oh, nice.
Dark Beach is on my to read. It's the new Behemoth book.
Wait, did I read that one? I may have.
Ruiz, Unger, Paris, and Jones. This is on my to read at home tomorrow. Canceled from Black Caravan. This is David Byrne.
Yep.
This one was good. I read this one digitally, but I want to reread it and lean into it physically. That's why it's in this stack.
I think that's going to end up being a next really big series.
Yeah. Well, David Byrne has written so many cool things, and David Reese is right. That canceled cover is pretty good. That between that and Stake and everything else that David has done at Scout, I'm into.
Yeah.
And I picked that. That was the last one up on the new issues table at my shop, and my shop owner was like, "God damn it, other people have been grabbing that," and I was like, I can't remember if it was in my Scout box or not. If you want me to bring it back so you can read it, let me know. And then the other things that I read this week, in addition to the things that I unboxed, I can cross 2 more covers off of my list. That Weiwei's and Soul will be sad. Because I don't know if Soul saw I got a 300, but Weiwei was like, "You motherfucker."
Oh, there we go. 361.
So picked that one up and sold it once or twice. I picked it, like, looking at the ticks, I'd say this is around like an 885. Maybe
it looks
a 9
clean
after
from here.
press. Yeah, but it's got
a
couple of ticks on the side. And then on the way cheap, I picked this up on Mercari.
Yeah.
And you can tell I picked it up on the way cheap because this came from my LCS Mylord Out of Its Mind. This one came in a Funko
garbage
Pop.
bag.
Yeah, like one, it looked like it was in a garbage bag when I picked it up. Like, I got this for, I think, $20 for a newsstand of this, and I'm like, okay.
People will argue with me. I think that came out a week before Secret Wars. I think that is technically the first appearance.
It's either one or two, and you have to look at what CGC says. But I think CGC might even cop out and say it came out in a tie.
I don't think they actually identify it.
Let me see if I can find.
Did you read last week? Did you read A Town Called Terror?
Last week? Oh, fuck yeah. That book's
Was that
gonna be
good?
so good.
Wasn't it good?
And maybe that'll be our theme for next week. That I can't. We might not have an interview until the first week of May, and it's somebody who will be like a 20-30 minute interview on something that they're writing for a queer collectors anthology through SourcePoint.
Mm-hmm.
So it won't be a 2.5 hour interview unless they want to hang around, and I won't say no because I like them on Discord.
Mm-hmm.
So it says this ties 252.
Yeah.
That's what CGC says on 141.
Yeah.
But maybe that can be what we focus on for next week is here's the month of April in comics that
there's
we've
a
had
lot
some
of good stuff
dope-ass
this
interviews,
month.
so let's each pick 2 books. So maybe that'll be what I send to everybody. And I hope that, J1's not asleep or feeling like crap, because I'm guessing he's dealing with some of the same shit that I am of sounding a little raspy. And I know that Cole's been busy with work, but I figure that can be a good catch up on, like, have you been dealing with life?
Yeah.
Have you read 2 comics in the entire month of April? Let's go.
Yeah. Here's what's come out this month that is good.
Yeah. All right.
Let's only talk about good books from April.
There you go. I like that. So this week, let's go with what did you read in April? Like your top 2 April books.
Ooh.
And if we have crossovers, we can do that. But I'm super down with pitching that as what we do for next week. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If there is anybody else who is gracious enough to want to throw $1 or $2 in the super chat, then I will add you to the wheel. But if you missed it from the beginning, I am after May 11th when Savage Avengers comes out. I'm going to send a couple of the different books that I have by David Pepose to him. He's going to sign them and send them back. The 2 that I can guarantee are a Scout's Honor trade and a Scout's Honor #1 and a Savage Avengers #1. I think I have an extra OZ #1, but I don't think I have an extra Spencer Unlocked, so I won't promise that. So at least those 3 things, he'll sign them, send them back. I'll make sure they get to you, hopefully before I leave for Nationals in June. So we got 10 from David Reese. We got 3 Shutter Ducks, 5 from Michaela, 2 Weiweis, and 5 Air Pop Control. So we'll wait another 30-ish seconds for the delay. See if anybody else wants to throw things.
Pretty good odds.
Yeah. I know. Andrew was our winner of the last Super Chat giveaway from the Cthulhu Invades Oz hardcover. There's Big Easy sneaking in the 11th hour. And we'll wait until my clock on. Oh, they both say, "Oh, Jesus."
Yep.
One clock says 12:29. The other one says 12:27.
I got 12:27.
So we'll wait until this computer says 12:28, and then we'll shuffle up and deal, y'all. But I appreciate the support tonight. Thank you, everybody who super chatted. Thank you, Big Easy, for becoming a new member of the channel tonight. And I think Wayway's re-up tonight, so thank you for that, my friend. It says 12:28, so what? This is episode 21, so yeah, we'll shuffle it 21 times. You ready? So David's at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So we got air pop control at the top, air pop control at the bottom. I now know that I need to dick move customize this to make it spin for 60 seconds. So good luck, everybody. Thank you for the support. Here we go.
So, 60 seconds. It's going to be so long.
Poser ASMR. Hello, everybody. Thank you for getting things.
So gross.
The only person on this list I don't know how to get a hold of is Michaela. So, David, it's going to go to Shudder, and I'm going to have to finally ship his box full of a million things. It's going to go to Shudder.
Rigged. Congratulations, Shudder Duck. That's a really nice super chat to win.
Yeah.
Autograph books. Autograph trade. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to keep one or two things for me.
I can use my... Yeah.
But I also like
friend.
that...
Not a hype button.
I like that we interview people who are cool enough where it's like, can I send you some shit to sign to give away and you will get nothing for it but your measly per issue check from your publisher?
I think David feels slighted. I think he wanted to talk about Week's Comics. We may have done him an injustice.
Well, I think as we were talking pre-stream, he was like, I can't remember the last issue of this that I read, that I think he had 3 or 4 converging deadlines that were like, you can't read shit, motherfucker, unless
no,
you
he's
want
like,
to get paid.
Oh yeah, Marvel books. I have to read all those for work.
Yeah,
but the stuff I love, I don't. Nothing doesn't love Marvel, but
yeah,
he's behind.
He's somebody definitely worth following because he doesn't pull punches in the way he talks about books online. And if he does, then he's like we are, where it's like, we're not going to talk a lot of shit on a book. We're going to be like, this one was kind of...
I don't want to really, hard shit on it, but I mean...
unless you're Nick Spencer taking a shit on Spider-Man.
Unless you're Nick Spencer.
Yeah.
You don't fuck with Spider-Man
like so we're never getting Nick Spencer. Like, Nick Spencer could write the greatest comic book ever, and I'll be like, hey man, you want to come on the channel and be like, you can suck my dick from the back.
I'm sorry, you're dead to me.
And I'll be like, yeah, that's fair. All right. So next week's theme will be what
the best of April.
Yeah, the panel's 2 favorite books from April. I think that's a good way to go. Hopefully we'll get the whole gang together again. Hopefully I don't fall asleep next week. But that gives us time to prepare images. Maybe me put banners together and make this look all professional like. And we'll do the member and Patreon giveaway for March and April.
Nice.
But I think it's going to be 2 pops, 2 slabs, a pop and a slab to each allocation. So
nice.
I'll make sure to get that out. You'll have, like I said, 2 weeks on the shirts if anybody is interested. And I think that's it. Jelly, you got anything?
I got nothing. I'm already looking forward to next week.
Me too. I appreciate all of you. My hell weeks are almost over. So as always, y'all, thanks for stopping by. And have a good one.